Yeah, I think so.
Good, because you already started recording.
You're the worst.
I always do that crap.
Hey, y'all.
Howdy.
Ricky
Wow.
sprung it on me.
That's right. I was like, bam. I was like, are you ready? And she was like, yeah, I guess
I
so.
was like,
As
let
she
me
was
check
saying that.
my hair. Never mind. He had already started it. So this is the hair you get. No, obviously I don't care about my hair. And I go with
Because you go.
happy chic, messed up. I
with
like
the
I just
flow.
I can't be nicely coiffed. That is just not within my personality. I've tried and it doesn't work. Oh, look, do you see the cat here? You're a jerk.
How about this one for you? Dude, with this new computer, guys, I should give you some updates. Sorry. I have a new computer, and then my internet died. And then we were trying to record. Like, we had this ready, like a week and a half ago? Like, we were going to do this
10 days.
Thursday or Friday, so that this would be out by Monday of this week that's already gone and passed. My internet died, and then when we were finally getting to a point where we could sort of record and it wouldn't sound terrible, Shell gets sick and got overwhelmed with work, and so did I. Frankly, I was just like, dude, I'm exhausted, but let's do it. And then we just couldn't. It just didn't happen. So
Yeah, you know what? Though it was really cool. Like I opened up Fosse book today because no, it wasn't Holly. It was before Holly. It was Roseanne. Had done I guess an answer, and then I saw that you had posted, and Danny had said something. He was like, "I saw you didn't post last night," and I was like, "Babe, I just didn't feel good." Because Danny, my husband, is still out of town. He gets back tomorrow night. I'm very excited. No, tomorrow's Friday. He gets back Saturday night. Still, it's really close. Really close.
Yeah. Well, but that's it's going to work out good because we're going to do this one today, and then we're going to do our Cosmovision. Yes, we're doing a Cosmovision, guys. I know we've been slacking it for a while, but we got one tomorrow.
Excited.
We are excited. I don't want to give what we're talking about because it's very cool.
It's real cool
because we're not going to drop it at the same time. So,
but anyhow, so I open up the Facebook, right? And I see that you were like, "Hey guys, sorry, technical difficulties, but would you pray for Shelly and I?" And I was just like, "Oh!" And then Roseanne did, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And you had already responded to her, and I was just like, "Hey, thanks." And then Holly, and I was like, "Hey, thanks." And then after that, I went to work, guys, and I'm really sorry I have not looked at my phone.
Commented and liked it and stuff. If that's just, man, I just want to thank you guys.
Thank you, you guys. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. It's a really big deal. Like, and then the fact that generates enough algorithmic pull for people to come and look at it, even if you're on. So I've learned this. I'm like being behind the scenes. I've learned this. If you post something and it doesn't have sway, it does not get promoted, man. Whether or not you put it on your page and people follow you, they don't see it. That's happened several times. And in this case, man, it was just, a lot of love and a lot of outpouring. So thank you guys. It was really crazy to see that Roseanne was like, oh, I was thinking God put me, basically God put me on you guys on my heart. I was like, what? That's so cool. She's like, I was thinking about you guys this morning.
Like, I love that. I pray for people like so randomly, people who don't know me, have never met me, won't know me maybe until heaven, And I really think God honors that when he puts somebody, just across our path, on an electronic device or whatever, and we're just like, Lord, touch that person.
Yeah.
If they don't know you, help them to know you. If they do know you, remind them that you love them. Just like those little things, like there are people, and I know we've talked about it before, people we pray for, like Joe Rogan, Tim Pool. There and a few others that we pray for, and we want to see them saved. Russell Brand for me
watch him a while. I need to go check his stuff out.
Dude, I want that guy to know Jesus, and he's close, but he's also, there are those counterfeits that are right there.
Watchified.
But I I really appreciate that because I know God honors it.
Yeah.
And
It
to
it got
be
me
counted
thinking too.
among those people, that's just so cool to
It
me.
is very cool. It's cool that God puts people like us on you guys' heart. That's really crazy to me. Um, but it was also cool because I realized I was like, I really need to pray for the people that like support us and follow us. Like they have all sorts of stuff going on too. And so I started making that mental connection, that spiritual connection in my brain. And it's good stuff,
I
man.
do that. I do
It's good
that
stuff.
because it's really important to me. There are a few people who follow us that I pray for quite a bit. They're part of my prayer life.
That's awesome.
Um, but I saw this thing because I am consumed with Israel right now, as I imagine most people are, but I could be wrong, and it may just be passing people by. Um, but I got a thing in my email today asking, "Would you pray for Yaakov?" I think is who it was. He's a Messianic Christian. He was called up,
It's the worst
when
name.
right, whatever, and it's what it is.
Yeah.
But and it was like pray for him. Um, he's a Messianic Jew, and um, he's been called up. He has the opportunity to, you know, show his faith basically. And I was like, dude, yeah, I will totally pray for him. And it wasn't like a send money or anything else, but it was like start your own prayer wall where you pray for people. And I have this stuff I would show you, but it would require moving my camera. But I have on the back
Mm.
of my door over here a paper that is chalk paper. And
Oh, that's
I
cool.
just I have a new one because I had my old one and it moved here with us because there are things I was praying for, people I was praying for,
I'm
and
Oilers, by the way, Sean.
and I have not been doing that. I keep a book in my purse at all times, and the people I'm praying for,
Mm.
I write them in the book with the date. And if I don't have that book with me, then I'm not going to lie, I don't belong to the Apple family of phone users. I have a I have a phone that has a cool stylus because my husband really likes Galaxy Notes, whatever. But I'll
Mm.
just, jot down a note on my phone about who I'm praying for and then later on move it over. But I decided I'm going to go back to doing a prayer wall. I like that. And so, guys, if you want to be on that prayer wall at any time, you don't have to share anything other than pray for me, or you can share whatever you want to. It will be in confidence. You can DM us, and we will pray. And both Ricky and I are um, prayer,
Prayers.
prayers. We're
Prayer.
prayers.
Prayer. All right, you are
It
prayer.
weirds me out when people are like, "Oh, you're a prayer warrior," and I'm like, "Okay." I mean,
Yeah, I don't like that
yeah, but it
phraseology
sounds
either.
so
I've never liked that
weird.
phrase.
Um,
It just reminds me of the Bible Belt, to be honest.
Yeah. "Oh, you're such a prayer warrior," and I'm
You're
like,
a prayer
"Well,
warrior, brother.
but I mean also the effectual fervent prayer of the righteous makes much power available." So, I
Indeed.
mean, and which is why I pray. Simply, I pray because I'm powerless. Like 99.99999% of the time, really, I'm pretty powerless. I don't even know that I can take a breath, but God gives it to me, you know? So, I pray out of desperation, really. That's why I pray because I can't do anything and I see so much that kills me, and I've been so overwhelmed with what's going on in the world, with Israel, with the news, just with stuff that life has been heavy for me lately. This is a year where I've lost a lot of people kind of what I would term spiritual aunts and uncles and some family members. They're pretty close. So it's it's that's been hard for me. And I know it's part of life. It is what it is. And I know life is difficult is what it is, this present suffering. But I know that whatever it is, I can pray about it. I can pray in the spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. And with this in mind, I'll always be alert and keep on praying for all the saints. Um, it's it's out of need. I have a need to pray, and that is why I pray. And I assume that's why Ricky prays, but it doesn't matter. Like when Ricky prays for you, though, dude, it's so cool. I love when Ricky prays for me. Like,
Stop.
I
Don't say
swear
that.
to you.
Cheesy
It's
prayers.
it's always, and what do you always say at the beginning of your prayers when you're praying? Lord, thank you for this magnificent day. Like I'm gonna go back and look. I'm gonna show you
That's so
in
funny.
in our Marcos, but you say that a lot.
Do I really?
This glorious day.
Yeah, that's probably the one. That sounds more like me.
It might be glorious, yeah. But like so it's
It's a
cool when Ricky
glorious day.
prays for you. It's a good thing. I don't know. People like when I pray for them. I'm just like, oh,
I do
Chuck.
because you know how to say stuff well,
I do know how to say stuff well.
which is
God gave me that ability. I
which
don't
is
know.
kind of a lame way of explaining that you're eloquent because I
I
have
know
other
how to
words,
say
but
the
I chose
words.
say stuff well. Go me. Good one,
I
bro.
also kind of like I say stuff well. That works. Yeah.
You say stuff really well.
You word good.
Your words work. They do the things.
Nonetheless, guys, I promise anytime you want your need prayer, reach out to us. But even if you don't, what, like I said, we make a concerted effort to
Indeed.
pray for the people in our lives who matter to us. And if we have had communication with you, chances are good we have also prayed for you. Even if it's been, Lord, show that idiot why he's wrong. Yeah.
Dang.
No, we may not have prayed that way. I might have prayed that way on occasion, though.
Oh, I
It's
mean, I prayed that
possible.
way too. I'd be remiss if I didn't call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
You
But
know.
we're ever so grateful for y'all. Like
Yes.
truly, truly. And I just want to say thank you, you guys, because I have a cold and it's been a week. Like Monday at 10 a.m. It was like, oh, it's been such a long week. And been 3 hours at work. So,
Sheesh, man.
when it's one of those.
But it's all good because we're here now. We're gonna
We
do this.
are.
Um, guys, we're gonna be talking about some cool stuff today. Sorry for that real long intro. It's only sort of sorry because that's just the way we are.
Yeah, we always do long intros. You
We
know
do.
where to find us. If not, check out some of the stuff at the bottom of our screens. Figure it out. We know
Don't worry.
y'all's smart.
I'm gonna tell you exactly where you can click on this time. If you don't want to hear us ramble for the beginning, then you can do that.
Like and share us, beat the algorithm, blah, 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 blah. If you don't
Cricket
like what
rep.
we have to say, please click the thumbs up button twice.
There you go.
No,
Geez, Shelly,
or
you
is
just
it the
knocked it out of the way.
thumbs down button twice? Whatever. Oh, I don't
Um,
remember now.
So obviously you guys can see, all the stuff, solo.to/CTDW, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, which is very, very slowly being uploaded. Obviously I haven't had a whole lot of time to do a whole lot of anything. So bear with us in that respect. And if you guys would like to sign up for $3, only $3 tiny dollars, you can do so on Spotify
$3.
or you can do so on Patreon and get in the loop. I would recommend Patreon. Actually, we probably don't make as much money with you guys going over there, but I actually don't care. You guys stay a little bit more in the loop that way, but you're welcome to sign up on Spotify as well. I send out the information for every episode to keep you guys in the know. And if there's anything that's behind the paywall or you get early access, I send that to you guys by email. If you are not a Patreon subscriber, you will also get it by email automatically. So that is the way that
Repeat
works.
for all you bad apple people out there.
Bad apples.
Bad apples.
Okay. All right.
Should they be doing whatever you do at Apple Play? Like, I don't have an iPhone, you guys.
What are you saying, Shell? Are you asking? Oh, you can follow us on Apple, like Apple,
Like,
on iTunes. It's
rate
not
us.
iTunes anymore. Whatever it is, the equivalent. I can't remember what it's called. But you can follow us. Apple Podcast. That's what it's called. I'm sorry, I forgot what it's called for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can follow us there. Absolutely. You can follow us there and get the same updates that you would normally get. So absolutely, you can do that. Absolutely. So do that. Go over and follow us if you're not doing so already. Subscribe for $3 on Patreon or Spotify, and we'll let you know in the future how everything else is going, if going at all. That brings me to our next point. We are talking today about agua. It doesn't sound very cool in Spanish like that. Sounds kind of cheesy. We're talking about water today, guys. And you're like, water. Water is amazing. There are multiple states of water, and there are multiple bajillions of things that can happen with water. You can also drink it, which I will be doing shortly.
You can.
But in particular, we are talking about sacred water and the potential discussion of portals in or through water. And there will be around water. Yeah, because as you will see, it is not necessarily my opinion that water itself is a portal, although I do not rule out that possibility because there are some pretty interesting occurrences, or at least, I don't want to call them myths or legends, but at least oral traditions, at the very least, right, of water being a type of gateway. So,
we'll name. We'll talk about a few.
Indeed.
Dude, do you know I did not put the Red Sea in there at all?
Did you not? Hey, hold on. Before we go any further, I'm going to be the fact checker today. Way back when we were talking about, it was one of the very first episodes we did when we did that one with Kelsey about praying through the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told you guys that the water was congealed in its depths, and then I said that means frozen. I literally went and looked it up not that long ago in English because it's like, oh, maybe that's just Spanish. Or maybe it's just, a false cognate or something like that. No, sure enough, it does mean to freeze. It means for the molecules to slow down and stop being active. So if that's what that means, that's pretty wild. It's a pretty wild place for that.
So not congeal, but freeze.
Well, congeal is it's because the word in Spanish is congelar, which literally means to freeze. That's the word we use for freeze, like when something freezes. So that's why I was like, oh, it's congeal. That congeal means to freeze, right? But Kelsey was like, well, that's more of, in scientific terms, more of like a gelatinous type of.
Right. That's yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, I guess that's entirely possible, but I mean, I don't know. That seems like a very amorphous phrase, or maybe we just have multiple meanings for congeal in English.
I mean, yeah, definitely possible. Long story short, God made walls of water stand up and not move and pummel over the children of Israel.
Yes.
Talking about Moses, in case somebody is not tracking with us right here.
Moises.
Well,
I think it changed. Moshe. So, actually, I will say, kind of on that, piggybacking on that thought, water largely, in my opinion, and this is still kind of like the intro idea about what we're talking about today, water is largely not, in my opinion, a portal itself, but rather kind
You
of like a
think like a
facilitator.
conduit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a facilitator of types, but it certainly does seem to have to do with death. Water has a lot to do with death, um,
Yeah.
and
It
going between the under and upper world. We'll just leave it
so
like
as
that.
far as it having liminal properties, I have to go with
Certainly,
yes. It
yes,
is
I
a
absolutely.
liminal space. It is a
Yep,
liminal substance.
in frickin' deed, absolutely. It is absolutely a liminal space, or liminal facilitator, liminal space facilitator, I guess we could call it. So that is it's very cool, very very interesting, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about how that is the case and how we have come to that conclusion. We will also be talking about a rather controversial topic, especially in scientific circles. We always talk about controversial stuff on this podcast, right? Like that's the point.
Right.
But
I think that is the point.
it is a point. But it's not intention. I'm not really trying to go out of my way to be intentionally uh, uh, controversial with the following declaration, kind of like a versus science thing. Like that's not what I'm going for.
Well, no,
Uh,
because we don't ever versus science. We
correct.
are intelligent enough to realize that science just points all of its fingers right back to the science maker.
Right. Oh, that old chestnut, huh? Um, yeah. So long story short. Oh crap! I just lost my train of thought. Oh, we will be talking about water memory. That's what I want to get at. Water memory is a very interesting thing, and it made me question a lot of what water actually is. It was well, you'll hear in a second that I was coming to interesting conclusions. Kind of like, well, is it this? Does it do that? Is there animacy there? Is there non-animacy? What is going on here? Like, what is this thing? And then once you kind of get through your initial thoughts, you feel like a dummy, but then you have to realize, well, but it's weird, dude. It's really weird, and you don't really know what it means sometimes. Like when you're looking at things, you don't really know what that means. So,
Right.
without further ado, um,
And
go ahead, Joe.
there's a lot of interesting um, information out on the internet. We live in the information age. There's so much, and sometimes some of it seems like really plausible until you start digging in too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All that's very true. Yeah, it was. Geez, just how else can we say it? It was a rather disconcerting journey. It's always funny when we research these topics. Like I'm expecting, it's almost like really like doing. You have a hypothesis and then you do some experimentation and then you come to a conclusion. Like a lot of times, I feel like when I do these, especially in this topic in particular, it's been very like trial and error, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to follow my studies this way because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so I have to kind of start focusing in like, well, what does this actually really mean? And this has been a cool one. Water has been really cool. I mean, there's like a million other things I'd like to talk about and think about, but we'll see what we get to today. Do you want me to take the reins from here, or do you want to talk about
Yeah,
anything
I think
about?
so. No, I think you go first because you've got all the weird stuff, and then
I do have all the weird
and
stuff.
then I'll ground us back in in scripture
Yeah,
eventually, and probably a
absolutely.
little bit here and there in between, but
That's fine with me, man. So let's take off at the 24-minute mark.
now
um,
we'll
that's
begin.
okay. Not gonna feel bad about it. We haven't talked in a while, so
Guys, if y'all haven't already figured out to put us on 1.25 or 1.5 and listen to us, I don't know what to tell
yeah,
you.
we're four
Go to
dragons.
your
Sorry, guys.
setting and do that because I listen to almost everybody at least at 1.25, some at
Ooh.
1.5 speeds.
I just thought of a very cool um, logo for us.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I'm gonna stylize and finish it, but I'm gonna write out the words in Chinese for 4 dragons.
Cool. Don't
Or I could
forget
just write
about
the
it.
word for verbose, which would be comical as well, but I don't think so. It'd be cool with the other. Anyway,
We like dragon.
dragon. So today we're going to start by talking about a very interesting woman who, if I'm not mistaken, was doing or has been doing or did her PhD on essentially water glyphs or just interaction with water in general, hydroglyphs as she calls them. But it's a lot more than that, and I'll try and keep it as coherent as I can because there's quite a bit of information that she talks about that's pretty fascinating, as a matter of fact, but highly divinatory, I would say.
Yeah.
So this woman's name is Veda Austin, and give me 1 second, guys. What's up, Papa? Okay, I'll be there in a second. Okay. Kid is ready for bed. Of course he is, right when I start. So Veda Austin is a self-proclaimed hydromancer. So you can, let that guide you as we speak through this. But she really does, as we have begun to see here on the CTDW, science is inextricably linked to spirituality. And because that is the case, the path and form that one decides to employ that science and therefore spirituality really plays out and has consequences in the real life physical world that we live in. So I'm going to start kind of where she gets her ideas and why she got so interested in water. These thoughts are not fresh, unfortunately, anymore when we would have had them out and ready to go, but I'll do my best. She basically, what she does, and I'll start from there and then kind of work my way backwards, is she in particular takes water itself and puts it in a petri dish for the most part, right? And then she will freeze this water after having some sort of interaction or exposing the water to some sort of thing. She will put this water and freeze it, and she has a very particular, I didn't look up all her information because I think you have to pay for it. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay for this. I'm just going to, take her to word that she does this on her full time. So, she must be very serious about it. You can go and scour the internet.
Read her book.
I'd like to. Yeah, you can read her book. Her book's like $40. And I was like, I'm not going to pay $40 for your book. Sorry, dude. But it was very interesting. And if you guys would like more information, I can buy the book and I can research it. But for the meantime,
you can write. They can buy the book and research it.
They could also.
But I think they'll find that it gets very woo-woo, and we'll get to the woo-woo point before this episode is done.
Yeah. So,
sorry guys. Always a cat around.
Get a cat as long as he's not biting you.
She
give her time. She freezes this stuff after exposing it to some sort of, we'll call it stimulus, I guess, or what's the other word Kelsey would use? Catalyst of some sort, right?
Yeah.
And as this water freezes in certain stages of freeze, it reveals something that has to do with the catalyst itself. With the stimulus itself, particularly the stimulus. And in a lot of cases, she's really got to see reflections of images. So she'll see like a staircase if she puts it next to, some stairs, or she'll see that the water will show a picture of a knife if she leaves it there exposed to the knife. And it's very interesting because she doesn't expose the water for very long to a particular image or particular thought. I think it's like 30 seconds, she said, if I remember right. And the water reflects this stuff as it's freezing. And
the frozen water, right?
The frozen water, the water, and it's in particular the stage that she uses is the two outer caps are the bottom and top are frozen because she puts it in a freezer. And so that middle, I guess it don't have to be in a freezer because it would still do the same thing. But the middle section is like what did they call it? I think she called it easy water, which you guys can go and look up yourself, which is kind of like H3O, if I remember right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like it's a different state of water, and so that state of water seems to like be able to reveal or regurgitate, right? Whatever it's been fed, essentially, right? Or reflect is probably
Mirror, yeah,
yeah,
reflect is, I
exactly.
think, the
So that is particularly interesting. So that in and of itself does prove that water does have some sort of memory. And I'll see if here in a second I can find some images for you guys. Let me talk about how she got down this path. There is a gentleman, a Japanese gentleman. Well, I can't remember if he was a, I don't want to say pseudoscientist in the way, in like the meaning of like he was searching for the esoteric, more like he did it in his off time sort of thing, if I understand right. He would expose water to certain words or ideas, and the water would respond accordingly. So if he would expose the water to and I've talked about this before, to like heavy metal music, it would be dissonant. The water would freeze and be dissonant and would have a very scattered pattern of of crystallization, right, as it froze. And the inverse was true when he would expose it to like classical music. The water would make these beautiful, geometric shapes that would reflect essentially what the water was being fed, I guess, if we're going to call it anything else, which kind of was her basis for like, okay, there does seem to be something here as far as like water having memory. Like clearly there's something here about this, right? Well, that was really interesting. And the guy that I guess really got another guy that got her into it was Laurent. He was he kind of was in the image and geometry base, but all this kind of oh wait, who was this other guy? There's one other guy. I can't remember the guy's name, but he noticed something really interesting. Now this is very, very particularly weird, actually. He got the idea that, and you'll forgive me, I'll have to look up his name later, but he got the idea that water had memory because he walked into, the first time he really thought about this was he walked into a meat market and he found a piece of liver or a liver, right? Like just meat, cold meat for that was frozen or at least really, really cold so that it wouldn't go bad. But it was in the window. You know how like you can walk into a butcher shop and you can see that the glass itself, the pane, is frozen, and it'll cast
has
some
the frost, right,
correct
right.
exactly. Well, that frost was revealing an image of the liver, and when there was a heart there that was sitting there for mincemeat or whatever it was going to be used for, it was revealing the image of a heart on that frost. And I was like, that is super, super interesting. So we already kind of start to see stuff there. Well, let me kind of go further down the rabbit hole with Miss
Was
Veda.
that Emoto? Was that
Emoto was the one that
Masaru
exposed it
Emoto, or
to.
was that
He
okay?
was the one
So
that
it wasn't
exposed it
him.
to like words and the music and stuff like that. He was the one that really. And there's some cool images. If you find some, Shell, you're free to post those. Go for it.
Yeah, I've
There's some really
got
pretty
some up
stuff.
here.
And there's some videos. I'll put some links in our podcast as well as some short videos you can watch of him doing that kind of thing. And it's very fascinating. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. It's just amazing to watch. So that is we'll call it a superficial reason to believe that water has memory. Now she is from New Zealand, and I think it is her father that is Maori. And there is a word. There's a word that that oh my goodness. Ma, the Maorians, is that what we would say? The Maorians? It's a weird way to say that. The people of Maui, or of Maori, sorry. Maori, to clarify my spelling and the word I'm saying, because obviously, I'm not native. So, anyway, they have a particular word which is wairna, I think that's how you say it. And what they believe that there is a type of physical water and a type of spiritual water. Huh. Where have we heard something like that before? Nonetheless, I should mention before we go any further, and Shell will be able to. Thank God they removed that ad. Thank God. Hey, don't cover your mic. We can't hear you.
Sorry.
You're good.
I'm like,
So they had this physical. They have this physical and spiritual sense of water.
I got it, and then it went away. Grr, tell you.
So she already has this idea, this concept of water, and I should mention, and Shell will get more into this. I don't want to steal her thunder too much, but it's interesting that she does not call this water, and that those on Maori do not call the water living water, but they just call it spiritual water. So take that for what it is. Look how cool those are.
So yeah, apparently he said words, and then that's how the water froze.
Yeah. And what's crazy, look at this: polluted water before prayer, polluted water after prayer. That's pretty crazy, man. That's crazy.
It's very things that make you go,
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it sure is, man. So, where it starts to get weird is where she goes down that little bit of road, and then she said something when I was listening to her in an interview, and it was a very fascinating interview. But she says that she allows the water to be her spiritual teacher because it doesn't. If I remember, I don't know if I added this part in there because I was thinking about it, but I think she said because it doesn't. Oh no, she did say that. She said the water's her spiritual teacher because it doesn't judge. I thought, yeah, what an interesting spiritual teacher. You don't want to have anyone, disciplining you or giving you.
So what are you being taught then?
Correct. What's the yeah. I mean,
because really you're not being taught. So I don't even.
I mean, that's the whole draw of, the Buddhist mindset, and frankly, transcendental meditation and all that, right? Is that there's the removal of self, because self is everything and everything is self. And so there's no accountability to anyone. We're all just sort of this seamless thing, that kind of just inhabits reality. When she said that, I went, you let the water be your spiritual guide? That seems like a poor judge of what am I trying to say? It seems like a poor decision.
Like not the wisest life choice. Yeah.
But anyway, nonetheless, it's interesting because she herself asked, and she started seeing stuff, and she's like, am I the one that is seeing this in the water, or is the water speaking to me? And I'll get to that in a second. So coming back to the whole hieroglyph thing, hydroglyph. I keep saying hieroglyph.
Yeah.
It's super small.
Well, because that's exactly what she was opting for.
Patented and trademarked. So she starts to see what she would call hydroglyphs. And how does she do this? Well, she gets the idea that she, like I mentioned at first, exposes the water to a stairway, to a stairwell, right? So the water sees the stairs, and the water repeats the stairs, and sure enough, it looks like stairs. I mean, it really does. And then she decided that she wasn't sure like what that necessarily means, right? What stairway means. And so what did she do? She grabbed a song by Led Zeppelin, which I'm sure you all know, called Stairway to Heaven, and she played that song for the water, and the water, what did it do? It made a stairway, which is pretty fascinating. So she started to come to this understanding that the water, in her mind, the water, and I'm saying in her mind because I'm not necessarily convinced, although a case could be made, and that's where we're going with this. She says, well, okay, let's expose it to something else, maybe not a stairway itself, or like what's going on here. Well, her idea is that she started to notice a sort of polysemic nature in these hydroglyphs. So she was seeing, and basically that is to say, she was seeing different meanings corresponding to a same glyph. Okay. Well, she started saying stuff like climb up. And then what would happen? Stairway. So she was like, okay, all right. So she wrote this glyph out, and now she has dedicated a large portion of her life to writing out these glyphs, to finding out what water is saying. Well, this is a hot take here because I'm going to come back to that question, and she brings up a really interesting point, because she views water through the lens of divinity. She says, is the water living, or rather, is the water manipulating me, or I'm manipulating the water? And I would pose a third option, which is the water being used to manipulate you? Is that what's really happening? Are you being manipulated by someone else using that water? Is that what's really
Right,
happening?
right.
So, and this could be a topic for another time, but could the same thing be true about rocks, for that matter? I mean,
Or anything else. I
or
mean,
anything
there
else.
there are instances or accounts of things uh being manipulated, whatever, by spirits, by poltergeists, by telekinesis, whatever the thing
Mhm.
is that they think there are material objects that have been acted upon in hauntings,
Yeah,
um, and that type of thing, which I would consider this part of that. So my take on it would be that there's spiritual manipulation of
certainly.
physical things there for that. Now, I mean, is there something more? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. God's word doesn't necessarily talk about it. Um, but there's something about water. Jesus says, "I am the living water." If
Yeah.
you knew who you were talking to, you would have
Yep.
asked me for a drink of living water.
Mm.
Um, and we
Yeah.
definitely see water as liminal throughout the Word of God. And there's some very interesting instances with water, and so we'll go into what the Word says more. But I mean, there's something between Dr. Emoto and
Yeah.
Miss Austen. Um, and I'm sure there are other people. This bleeds though right over into New Age
It sure does.
ism, uh, like big time.
Yep.
And the thing about New Age is that like it's got this validity to it, and then you're like, oh wait, you know, and I think that's how this was because at first, like Rick, you were pretty gung ho, man. No, I'm telling you. And then as we
Yeah.
listened to this more, it was like, oh,
Yeah. I know.
oh,
Well,
there's
it,
something. And you know what though? I think that's part of our walk in
yeah.
life.
Good call.
So frequently there's stuff like that. If if Eve had been like, yeah, well, that's real cool, but oh, yeah, no, no, no. No, no thanks. I'm gonna go over and eat from the trees I'm allowed to eat
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
It would have
Absolutely.
been a different story. So I very often I think that it's a slippery slope.
Certainly. And to clarify kind of what you were saying about how I was looking at this and be like, yeah, it's this, no, it's that. I was, and I've made this statement before, like I think everything is alive. Now I wanna qualify that statement and then come back to it and revisit it with what I think,
Yeah,
with where I'm going
it's
with my
worth
thoughts now.
talking about.
I think it would be cool if that were the case. Um, I think it would be very cool if that were the case, that everything was alive, and because everything worships God. And God says in his word that if we do not cry out and praise him, that the rocks will do it in our place, right? That's where kind of I've gotten that idea. And there's another succession that has happened that makes me think the same thing. And it is an totally extra biblical thing. It's a more modern thing. It has nothing to do with I mean, it does have to do with the Bible because it's God's word, and so it allows me to filter my worldview, but it's not
Right.
an ancient thing. It's a new thing. It's a current thing. And that is the testimony by a military soldier about a confrontation with a UFO. And basically that
I
when
know who you're talking
you
about.
know exactly what I'm talking about. He got stopped on
Yeah.
the road. I won't make it super long, but he came in contact with a UFO, like about what if I'm sitting down about 3 feet tall. He was probably about UFO was probably about right here on him, if not a little bit higher. And he reached out and touched this thing, and he said it
From
felt like
inside his car.
he could, as he touched it and rubbed his hand down the side, like back towards himself, touching the UFO, that it felt like a cat's tongue, like that scrapiness, and that when he touched it, that it vibrated inside his whole, like his entire chest cavity. And that
Again, that's
was,
so like cat-like because
yeah,
obviously we all know I have cats. You've seen at least two of
yeah,
them tonight.
yeah,
But when you pet them and they vibrate, that's what a purr is.
yes.
A
And
purr is them vibrating bones at the base of their neck.
that reality made me like, because his testimony was, it felt like this thing was alive. Like he believes that this thing was alive. And that to me was like, wait. That's alive.
Well, I
That's
don't think we were
freaking weird.
planning on going here, but
No,
I mean, that is the whole premise for transhumanism
go on.
is
I'm
to
not sure I
take
follow.
a soul
Oh, I
and
see.
put it into
Yep.
a
Soulless.
a machine body of some
Yeah.
sort or a conglomeration of biosynthetic
Yeah.
body, but
Which, good God, raises all sorts of questions, right? Like,
it
if
does.
that guy is right that this thing is alive, then how is it alive? Like, is it a type of possession, right?
Well, I
And
wasn't necessarily thinking to go here either, but then that's
what's the
Ezekiel's
plan?
whole wheel within a wheel.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going, which makes me ask, because the God says that the thing is alive. So I'm like, okay,
Right,
well, the thing is
right.
alive, and it doesn't resemble any kind of creature that we can that God even, like, not even on the spectrum of creatures that we know about, right? Like, we've seen octopi that
Right.
are like at the bottom of Antarctica. There was a species that was just recently discovered, humongous, massive thing. I posted a few weeks ago, big old white, creepy 20 arms, 20 tentacled thing. And that still seems like a creature to me. Like, that still seems like something, even that like angler fish with that freaking crazy,
Yeah, those are so
it's,
ugly.
they're terrifying, they're hideous, but they got a
Yeah,
mouth, they got
very.
eyes, but when I think about a wheel within a wheel, I'm like, that sounds like, it really does sound like a spaceship to me. It really does. But then
Or
God
a
says it's alive.
gyroscope, gyroscope, gyroscope.
So that makes me think, and I'm gonna end this rabbit trail right here, and I'll come back to what I was talking about. There's a reason I'm going this way. Um, that makes me think that potentially Elohim have the ability to allow animacy in otherwise non-living objects. That's what that makes
Otherwise,
me think.
inanimate objects.
Correct.
Possible.
It's a possibility. I'm not. That's just where my brain is at right now with this kind of stuff, and that's what I'm thinking so far. So I'm going to come back to water, and now you'll see why this is relevant. Now, I was battling with, like, is the freaking water alive? Is it a living thing? I mean, we all say water is life, right? But I mean, But Jesus was the one very specifically says that I am the living water. It was not
Right.
anyone else. It was not any other old water. It was very specific water, right? That was life, right? There's waters
Right. Right.
that can allow or facilitate life, but water is not
Well,
life itself.
and there's the
And that was my
terminology is often because of the movement.
Sure, exactly. Yeah,
So
that's
living
very right.
waters that are flowing versus waters that are stagnant
Correct.
and
Correct.
unmoving. So
Yeah.
there's something to that, like we were talking about the living stones.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe they're living, but could it also be that there's movement going through them, light or energy or life, or I mean, I don't know, because I have not seen the living stones. I've only read, what Ezekiel and
Not been
John
there.
say about
Yeah,
them.
so
But I know there's something there. And could they be living? Well, absolutely they could be, because God's imagination like far exceeds mine.
oh yeah.
My imagination's pretty like meh.
I almost am obligated to do this now, and this will leave you guys with the idea of why I'm torn. I should say why I'm torn about whether or not everything can be or is alive. And there's a story in the Talmud, and it's about two rabbis that are on their way, I think, to the synagogue, if I'm not mistaken. And you're gonna like this one, Shell, because I was gonna mention it. I think last episode actually.
I bet you're about to talk about the golem.
I am. And so what do these creatures what do these two rabbis do? They don't have anything to eat. Well, they speak an animal into existence for themselves to kill and eat. And that concept got pulled down through the ages. And the golem is actually fairly recent concept, although I do wonder how recent. Based on those Talmudic readings, I can't remember the guy's name. Shoot, I'll have to look it up. I think I have it on hand. I'll be looking while I'm talking here. The theory or the idea was that, well, in the speech is the power of life, which, I mean, obviously God, that's a biblical principle, probably just a spiritual principle in general, right? There's the power of life and death in the tongue. And
Right.
he he said that's how, I can't remember the reason that he made it, but that's how a golem came to be. He spoke its life into existence. And actually, oh, here it is. It was a Kabbalist idea that determined that speech permuted the earth into a calf by the formulas in the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the book of creation. And that was where the Kabbalah pulled that from that book. And so they said that, like, when God speaks in Genesis, it's the same kind of idea. And so that was what allowed the golem to be created. It was back in by Rabbi. Oh, here it is, Rabbi Judah Loew of Prague. Back in 1525, 16 to 1609 is when he lived. So back about 1600s, right around there. So what is my point here? Maybe water itself is not alive. I'm not convinced one way or the other. I am leaning towards it's not. But given all of that information that I just gave you guys, I'm leaning towards the fact that maybe with our words, we have the ability to make things live. Or maybe not us. I don't know. But maybe speech
There
or
is
maybe something allows things to come to life.
right. There is power in our words, and there's logos. But sorry, guys, can't move. I think that the view that we can create with our words is taking the power away from God and putting
Agreed.
it into the words.
Good
And
call.
that's where I have
Witchcrafty.
a problem with that, right? As a matter of fact, that's what the whole golem story, it's It is. It's an incantation that they use, and eventually we'll need to get into what's the difference between prayer and incantation
Yeah. Yeah.
because um, they're similar. They are,
Oh, certainly.
and I think uh, that we'll end up taking a break in a second, but I'll say this real quick before we do, and that is the difference between witchcraft and not witchcraft.
Mhm.
You know, my favorite saying, did you jump the fence or did you walk around and get to the gate?
Yeah.
It's witchcraft things are the things where you jump the fence, you take the shortcut, the easy way out.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's really good insight. I'm glad that you said that. It really gives a lot of light, sheds a lot of light onto that. So, coming back to this, let's see if there's anything else I want to mention. Oh, there is one other thing that I want to mention. What's interesting about, or two things about this before we move on. What's really interesting is that this girl Veda Austin, who does all this research, she I was really fascinated by all the stuff she's doing. It is very fascinating. I'm not saying it's
It
not.
is.
It's
It is.
super
No,
cool.
it is interesting
And it's worth
for
looking into.
sure.
It really is worth looking at. Certainly pray about all things, like you all should pray about everything, right? Prayer without ceasing, as the word says. But I really do feel like it's likely that the water, if it truly is alive, or whether it's alive or not is irrelevant. But even if it is truly alive, then the interaction that she's having with it is just like scrying. It's just the same thing.
I
It's
mean, it's
it's
100% like
divination.
Scrying. It's just it's a snapshot of
It's modern divination.
scrying.
Yeah,
Whereas normal scrying would be you would see uh
an image or
yeah, or image in motion. This is
yeah,
just frozen. I mean, literally it's freeze frame
yeah,
of
absolutely.
the same.
And it's super interesting to me because I mean she does call herself a hydromancer, so there's that. But she
Right.
she she kind of like at one point I was like, "What are you doing?" She said that she set her a petri dish by her head when she was sleeping, and she basically used the water in the petri dish as a dream catcher. Like that's not what she said, but that's exactly what a dream catcher
Yeah,
does.
that's
So
really what she explained, and I
yeah,
remember that. I was like, "Oh, no,
maybe
thank
we should
you
do
very
that.
much."
But what was really interesting to me about these hydroglyphs that she talks about, and this is kind of a point that I guess I'll leave off on, is that she didn't even mention it, but the other guy that was interviewing her mentioned it. Um, she said that the hydro, well, she was trying to make the connection to the names of the gods having to do with water, and that's all good and fine. I mean, it is what it is. But what was interesting to me was that she says that these glyphs were essentially like speaking to her. She would ask the water stuff, and the water would respond to her very, very divination style. And the glyphs were kind of like ways of responding to her and everything. And one tiny snippet that this interviewer mentions about her that she didn't bring up, and I was like, oh man, I wish I could have freaking heard that story. Like I would almost pay to just get behind the paywall to listen to this guy
Oh,
do
that's
this thing.
right, 'cause he had the second part. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He says that she had a dream. I think when she was little, that she was in Antarctica in a cave, and she saw glyphs that were similar to what the water was showing her, like that she was walking through some cave in Antarctica. And I was like, "What have we been talking about? What have
Right.
we
Well,
been
here's
talking
the
about?"
deal too, is that God doesn't tell you to do things or to not do things that aren't real. You know, when he says don't play with divination, that's because divination is real.
Yeah.
Now, are there lots of quacks that aren't? Absolutely.
Sure.
Probably way more than the real deal.
Hmm.
But the reason we're told not to play with it is because it is legit. And I know you and I were talking about this, but the Elohim are not subject to time the way we
Yeah.
are. If they
Yeah.
are not on this planet, they're not. They're not stuck in time the same
Yep.
way we are.
Yep.
So they do know the future, at least to some degree. They're not omniscient or omnipotent, so they're not everywhere at once like Yahweh is.
Yeah.
And they don't know everything, but they know the stuff that they interact with
Yeah.
in outside of our linear time.
Yeah.
So they can come
Correct.
back and they can tell you, these things, this blah blah blah. And so I think that there's legitimacy to I don't know what's his name, Michel Nostradamus.
Mm-hmm.
He's uh many of his quatrains have come about. Some of them are so obfuscative that, well, duh, it's very easy to
Sure.
read something into it.
Well,
But some of them
frankly,
are more specific, and I think that the validity comes because that spirit has some knowledge of stuff
sure.
outside of our timeline
Sure.
that is going to happen in another part of our timeline.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all we got to do is look at quantum physics to know that there is clearly something that they can see that we can't see, because if you can be at two places at once simultaneously and also not,
Right.
like,
Right.
mm, there's something real
Schrodinger's
weird going
cat
on there.
has validity. Right. Like,
Right.
right. For
Yeah.
real.
Um
So, not saying that she's not experiencing anything.
oh,
I'm just
she's
saying
certainly
the
experiencing
source
some stuff.
is not something I want to play with.
But it's I think she labeled it correctly. It's hydromancy. That's what it is. Um
Yeah. It's just a modern form of witchcraft that she's doing.
yeah. And it's
And
really
you
funny. She says that the gods, well, sorry, the spiritual nature of water, or the water itself spiritually, is communicating glyphs, right? Well, what I thought was that it was very funny that she related it to ancient languages being more about feeling the languages than actually like concretely stating the languages. And I was like, well, when you start trying to feel your way through everything, you're going to
Ugh,
get kicked in the
right.
head or beat to death in the dark. Honestly, that's what's going to happen.
Right. Because our feelings are valid, but they are not reality.
Yeah. And actually, this will be a good segue. Um, there does appear to be something real legit about waters healing us. And that is what we will get to in a scientific perspective, but also in a biblical perspective in just a second. And we'll
Yeah,
be
that's good.
right
There's
back.
lots of healing. Awesome.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to pause for just a second. Cool. Um, had to lay the kids down for bed. Shelly went to go pee. I also took advantage of the time to go pee and get water. So
The
get more
dog also
water.
went outside.
Water.
Dogs are happy now. The water, oh gosh.
I will speak nicely to it so that it will be beautiful when it crystallizes and I freeze it. It's not going to become crystallized anytime soon. It's going to be pea water.
I
That's what's
will
going to happen.
I will just enjoy my water that is raspberry lemonade. Man, I
Nice.
love this stuff.
It's good stuff. Okay, coming back to our putting our thinking caps back on. Put your thinking caps on, kids. We are going to be talking about the properties of healing, of waters for healing. Now, I'm going to come at this one actually from a fairly scientific perspective, point of view. I don't know if that's the same thing. I guess it is.
Mhm.
And I'll let the experimentation kind of speak for itself, because this is in fact, way more scientific approach to the idea of water memory. I will say as a caveat, I really do believe that water has memory, like we mentioned, I mean, it clearly seems to have memory of some kind.
Okay, well, let me go on record right here
Do it.
with this. Speaking of science, do you remember floppy disks?
Yes.
Do you know how they worked at all?
I mean, I think I do. I mean, I remember that the metal part was pulled back so that the disk could be accessed, because otherwise it would be damaged. So once it was put into the computer, that metal part was pulled back, and then the disk spun, and then it was, read. But I don't remember. I
Do
don't
you know
remember the
how
exact way it was.
information was recorded on it?
I don't. I was too little to remember how that happened.
And I'm not. This is not like my area of science, but it was done through electromagnetism.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense.
So that's energy.
Yeah.
So that's how data can be put in crystals. It's how
Right.
data is put on our thumb drives.
Right.
That is how data is stored on hard drives. It's metal. Metal is a rock.
Yeah.
Water has polarity. That
Metal
is the
does rock.
thing that makes. Oh gosh.
Bruh.
How dare you?
What? Water has polarity,
Yes, it does.
which is why it forms the crystalline structures the way it does. And I'm not a hydrologist. Although, let me tell you what, in college, there was a point when I thought, can I just make this my major? It was the
Yeah.
coolest thing. I happen to have a biology professor who was brilliant. I have actually had a few.
You
And
gotta keep it all hydrated.
God. Water is really, really amazing. But where I'm going with this is that with the polarity, there is electrical conductiveness. Water is highly
Yeah.
conductive, highly conductive.
Yeah. This is going to be a really
So
important point.
it stands to reason that the conductivity of water would in some way be usable for transmission of data or memory, which is what I mean. Data is memory.
Right. Correct.
So,
Correct.
and the fact that they, oh my gosh, the things that we can do with science. They can put a ton of data into a little itty bitty ship of what is the word I was going to use?
Chip?
No, a piece of DNA.
Oh,
basically.
strand
of DNA there that works, right? It's crazy. Technically, there should be ways they're working on it where we can have data embedded in our cells, in our blood. I mean, there already is. That's what DNA is. God embedded code in our cells.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the memory of the ages. That's what our DNA is. It's your grandparents' story all the way,
I love that
from from Noah all the way down. It's kind of crazy. We compartmentalize things so much in life that sometimes we don't see the bleed over like we should.
That's a problem with modern with modern Western mentality, is that while there's definitely merit to it and there's definitely uses for it, the fact that disciplines are not, especially now, wasn't so much that when things were free range and they were still organic, but now like
Right.
things are specifically impeded from crossover. And I really believe, sorry, I shouldn't say I think, I'm convinced is a better way to say this. I'm convinced that because things are so compartmentalized, things are not allowed to be multidisciplinary, that people don't find truth easily. Truth
Well,
is intentionally hidden that way.
with compartmentalization, oh yeah, I just think of any large government agency. Take Lockheed Martin. You
Good, you were
only
just about to bring it
know the only part you know is the part that you work on. You don't you have no idea of what, whatever, say you're making the space rover. You don't know what the whole thing, the end result is. You're working on the tire. That's all you know about is
up.
the tire.
Yeah.
That works very well in the military industrial complex
Mhm.
because people only know their tiny little bit of the jigsaw puzzle. Nobody sees the whole picture, or very few people see the big picture. And so secrecy is built in
Mhm.
to
Yep.
uh, to the system that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot of that. And I think that's why too that um
That's why you can walk into a
there's
doctor's office and not really be attended to, and the doctor like walk right out, and you like, I have more questions now than I did when you freaking came in the door. What's going on
right.
here?
Well, I was thinking more of the when they try to make it a debate between God and science. So it's
Yeah.
God or it's science. No,
Yeah.
man, God made science. It is God and science.
Right. And
The one does not cancel out the
well,
other at
I mean,
all.
the 2019 Fluey Patui should have taught you that the science is not anything else more than Science Inc., right? And there is no, I mean, for the most part, there is no more room for science to be practiced like it was intended to be practiced.
Right. It
And
is no longer the act of
right,
observation
and the problem
and
is,
doing experiments that can be um,
repeated.
thank you, repeated.
Yeah,
Gosh, that's just when Shelley's
it's
brain
okay.
is
No,
tired.
there was another word you're looking for though, that have repeatability or something like that.
Yeah,
But I mean, it's what I said at the beginning. Why would, if science is inextricably linked to spirituality, why, what else would make more sense than when, I mean, where did science come from? Science came from monks practicing, trying to understand their world, trying to make
right,
sense of nature, trying to understand what God had created. Like, that's where the scientific method was birthed. It wasn't birthed
right,
in some laboratory. The laboratory came long after
right. The
these
laboratories are
men and women in
resolved.
isolation were trying to understand God's grand purpose and design. So,
His
I mean,
creation.
and that's why
Well,
it's, I mean,
see,
it is inextricably linked to spirituality. I mean,
there's that thing though where a scientist will say, I don't know anything about spirituality. That's not my
sure,
thing. It's
sure,
they equate materialism with science.
right, right,
Um, and so, science and materialism and spiritualism and never the twain shall meet, except that that's not really how it is. How it
right.
really is everything is so intertwined. Um, and if we, have your specialty, absolutely, but in the end, you can be a molecular biologist all day long, but you still have a soul.
Right.
that still enjoys music or still thinks something is pretty and it brings a smile to your face. Not everything is not all concrete, just like everything isn't all ethereal.
Right.
There's
Right.
balance. The world is multifaceted.
I wouldn't even necessarily call it bleed over. I would just say that that's just the way things are, and we use terms. Wow, man, thank you, Holy Spirit. We use terms like bleed over because we misunderstand God's design. I
Yeah.
mean, that word shouldn't exist, but it exists because we have bad theology. Whoo, man, I'm preaching to myself. Holy crap.
Yeah.
So I want
Because
to go ahead.
because we compartmentalize so much, we don't even
Yes.
recognize that we
Yeah,
do it.
exactly. Exactly. It's so ingrained in our culture and in our, I mean, it is the Western veil. Like that essentially
Yeah,
is the
yeah,
Western
yeah.
veil, right?
I mean, it is postmodernism to a T. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Um, and 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 as a kind of a anecdotal, yeah, I guess it is anecdotal. As an anecdotal portion of this, I would say also that as we lead into our next topic, by the way, which is all about water's regenerating or healing power. Yeah, regenerating as well. Um, we will see very clearly that if science were just science, then scientists wouldn't have any problems accepting it, right? And the reason that words like a bleed over have to exist is because scientists refuse to work in more than one realm. And what am I getting at? Well, in the next topic, in this topic that I'm just about to bring up, the problem with water memory for a lot of people was that they were offended by the fact that they were dealing with the uh, molecular, and they refused to deal with the quantum, right? And so the quantum they found to be offensive as having anything to do with biology. But I mean, you know, honestly, if I didn't believe in God, I mean, freaking quantum is voodoo, man. Quantum is bloody voodoo. If I don't believe in God, it's creepy as can be. I mean, it's creepy even when you do believe in God. It is super
It
creepy.
definitely makes things different, but things act different, super, super large and super, super small.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Um,
honestly, I think we see the hand of God in both of those. Louis Giglio and uh, Passion. Uh, they don't go by Passion Church anymore, but whatever they did, the whole Passion movement. Um, back, oh gosh, 15 years ago, 18 years ago, Giglio put out a CD series that one of them was How Great Is Our God. Um, and oh gosh, what was the other one called? I'll have to look real quick. These videos, one of them deals with seeing God um, in the macro, and
mm,
one is seeing the hand of God in the micro.
yeah.
Um, and I really they were some of my favorite videos. I think I might still have them like in my garage because nobody uses DVDs anymore. Now you just watch it on YouTube.
Oh man. Yeah,
I
that's
know.
funny.
It's like, oh, how sad. How great is our God? And what's the other one? Indescribable. That's the other one. Those two teachings, if you have not watched them, please go watch them. They'll blow your mind. Doesn't matter that they're from like 2012 or whatever. No, probably before that. Um,
Oh man, there's some old teachings that are really cool. Go look up Chuck
there's
Missler if you haven't read any or watched anything by him.
yeah, I mean Chuck is great too, but just the whole quanta thing that you were
Mhm.
talking about made me think of both the quanta and then also the cosmic. and how God is so evident in both of them and
Yeah.
that's why they make us so uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's exactly right. That's what it comes down to, right? We're not. These are things that make us uncomfortable, and I've told you this before, Shell, and I don't know if I've said this, on the podcast or any point, but I love our podcast because it makes me uncomfortable. It makes me confront a lot of things that I have preconceived notions about, and I go, oh, I don't think I know how I feel about that, and I get less afraid to confront it, right? Because I didn't tell you this, but I had a conversation with somebody I just met, and we had like this really deep conversation. It was very surprising. She's a CPS worker, and I just happened to be there on site, and we ended up talking for like an hour and a half. We didn't even see the person that was there because they weren't there, or whatever. And we were just chatting and chatting and chatting. She didn't have anything to do. I didn't have anything to do, so we were just chatting. And man, I just started breaking down and she's very well educated, very theologically educated, but she didn't even know about like the giants or where demons really come from, why there's a hierarchy and stuff like that, and so you come to a point where you're forced up against a wall and you're like, oh, how does this work? But she said something that kind of tripped me up. Maybe you'll know this answer. But she said that in Arabic, apparently the name of God is more precise than the Hebrew. And I was like, I'm going to take a hard pass on that one and have some real big conflict with it. But I'm curious to know why, because I don't understand why she would say that. And I would like to know why, And I think certainly at least a year ago, I would have been terrified to know the answer previously. But man, you will know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Right.
It is so
I
true.
don't think that's true, but we'll definitely look into that because that's
But I
a
am
very
curious.
interesting
If anybody
claim.
knows, I would like to know why. And I asked her, is that in the Quran? Is that why? And she goes, yeah, I think it is. And I'm like, well, you should probably know that because that's a pretty bold statement to make. Like, if you're sure about that,
Yeah.
great, lambast it on. But I want to understand why. Anyway, so water memory. Let's take a trip to. No. That's up. Sorry, I can't do any French song that I can think of off the top of my head. So let's go to France. Let's go to Paris. No, I don't know what city in France it was, but there was a gentleman in the 1980s who was named Jaque Benveniste, and I'm probably pronouncing that terribly. Benveniste, I don't know, whatever. French is not my favorite thing. It's not my forte. It's my crappy. Don't I was so bad. It was so crappy. Like, that was so cringe. I said it and I was like, man, I'm cringing for myself. He had this radical concept and was trying to introduce it in science. That did it get you?
Yeah. Proceed.
Yes, proceed. That water indeed did have memory. And if I remember his experiment right, the one that I remember off the top of my head, forgive me, guys. There was a documentary that Shelley and I watched about this, which was absolutely fascinating and holds some serious weight cool. Because the wasn't Professor Luc Montagnier, wasn't he the Nobel Prize winner in, what was it, 2000? Was it 12?
Earlier, yeah.
2004? I can't remember the date off the top of my head. That's neither here nor there. Let me get to
he had been a Nobel recipient.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was previously a Nobel
where
recipient.
Ricky's going with this is that, like,
there's some validity.
There's a ton of pushback against this, and
this concept,
like, to the point where this Nobel laureate is treated like ye old redheaded stepson.
Receives no funding for trying to find out whether water has memory or not, and he's forced to work in like a space.
There's something about this particular study.
Yeah,
people just don't like, but it's fascinating. And when you look at it, it seems like super legit. I could not
Yeah.
find anything
I mean,
about it
it was
that
so
was like
airtight that it was like,
woo.
I don't even like, I wouldn't even know what question. I mean, I'm a layman, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm scientific on any level.
Yeah, but like
Um,
this is double
y-
blind, the
yeah,
everything, the
yeah,
control, everything
yeah.
about
It was
this
crazy. It was crazy.
experimentation, and it's totally uh replicatable.
Yeah, that's the word you're
It's
looking for.
it's flippin'
Let's get to it.
amazing.
Yeah, let
Yeah.
me lay it out for you guys real quick. I'll
I
try and go
think
through it
there
quick.
there must not be money in it, which might be why
Correct.
it's
Well, that's exactly what they conclude, right? Although there could be, but let's get to that here in a second. So, Jacques Benveniste was a scientist in the 1980s, very, very well respected until he came up to this water memory thing. And if I remember the experiment correct,
wasn't he
he
actually a doctor?
sorry, we can't hear you.
Doctor. Sorry,
Oh, he was a
wasn't he a
doctor.
medical doctor?
Okay, okay, there you go. Okay, I
I
knew
think
he had some legit credentials. I didn't remember what it was exactly. But anyway, he did an experiment on rats because they have, if I remember right, their hearts have an allergic reaction to egg yolks. So he would put the egg yolk on there, and it would cause the heart to have this allergic reaction. Well, if I remember it right, he diluted the water that it had the egg yolk in it. I may be wrong about this, but I just remember that essentially there was no egg yolk there, and he used water that had been around or contained the egg yolk and put it on the heart and the heart of this rat, and it had the same reaction, having no egg yolk physically present at all, in this sample. So essentially, he was ostracized. He was, I mean, just he tried to have the people from Nature come out so he could publish his work. They came, like the editor in chief came out and looked at his work, and he was able to like reproduce this thing one after another until finally something that they asked him to do he failed on, and they were like, "Aha! See, you're wrong. You're a liar. It's not true."
right.
And he was so ostracized by the scientific community after that Professor Luc Montagnier says that when he picked Benveniste's work back up, that he, in his mind, that he had been such a powerhouse in the scientific world, Dr. Benveniste, that the only thing he could explain him having died from, because he died shortly after, before he was able to work on his findings again and try and reproduce this all over again. He died, and he said that he died because he was essentially super depressed and ostracized, like totally outcast.
I mean, that
Um,
happens.
yeah, I mean, not that he committed
Yeah,
suicide, right? But just that he was just died
no,
of
but
heartache.
so in the word says that hope deferred causes the heart.
Yeah,
Sorry, it says rottenness to the bones.
yeah,
That's what
yeah, yeah,
hope deferred is. I mean,
yeah,
and that to me sounds very much like rottenness to the bone that you waste away.
yeah,
Um,
totally.
so I
Um,
definitely can see that.
yeah, I mean, it seems to make sense to me. It's not a point I would even argue. So, Professor Luc Montagnier, who fast forward to several years later, he is the Nobel laureate, wins the Nobel Prize. And I don't remember what year it was, but you can look it up. He passed away, actually, if I'm not mistaken, he just passed away last year. So it's kind of like in his memory.
Mhm.
He worked with HIV patients' blood, and in the plasma, he found an electromagnetic signal that was present in the blood of HIV patients. Well, he started using Jacques Benveniste's same hypothesis and experimentation, and essentially took the DNA from these HIV patients and diluted it, put it in a beaker, or a container of some sort, and diluted it heavily with water, right? And so he eventually, to not bore you guys to death, he eventually diluted this substance so much that there was not a single molecule left in the sample. Okay. So in some of the samples, not all of them, he did leave some in some of the samples, and that was precisely that, so he would have a placebo, and so that he would have, you know, an actual legit diluted quantity of the HIV virus. Okay. He had 10 placebo and 10 highly diluted solutions. Excuse me. So how did he go about testing this? So he takes all these solutions, both placebo and non, and he records the electromagnetic symbol and turns it into a digitized form. Okay. Now, he took 2 test tubes that were completely diluted samples, and they continued to emit this electromagnetic frequency. So once he did this, he uploaded this information from these completely 1000% zero molecule of HIV samples online, and asks the Italian University Benevento, which specializes in molecular biology. Okay, note, this is important. We're going to get into quantum, and we're going to be dealing with molecular. So it's important in your brain to keep the two separate. Okay, so they specialize in molecular biology. Well, he takes the data that was sent and digitized, and in Italy, I guess he's like the head there at the lab at the university, receives this digital signal in Italy from France. Okay, mind you, there's some serious distance in between both. And
there really is.
It's crazy. He puts some water, just regular water, in a test tube. Okay, and then in that test tube, he puts into like a small metallic barrel and covers it really well to make sure that there's no was it radioactive? Yeah, it was an anti-radiation chamber. That's exactly what it was, to avoid any potential distortion. So what does he do? Well, he plays the music of the electromagnetic digitized signal that was sent from France into this water. Okay, and then I think it was about for an hour.
I forgot about the resonance, the sound part of this.
Yeah.
It's such a cool experience.
I mean, all of this. I mean, that's why this is like, it's so crazy, because all of it's like, dude, you digitized the freaking thing. Like, it wasn't even in the same medium, and
right.
It's mind-boggling. Okay, so then they use the PCR machine, which basically, if I'm remembering right, basically shakes up the water intensely. I am not a scientist, obviously, guys. And then they put basic building blocks called nucleotides, which is just the basic organic material for DNA. Okay, production in this water.
Bits of protein,
but they're just pieces. They're not. There's no order to them. There's no structure. Right. There's no foundation even for them to do anything. And they also include what's called a polymerase. I think that's what it's called. Mm-hmm. Shell
polymerase.
And they use that as the catalyst, essentially, to stimulate these pieces. Okay, so when they put these nucleotides and they allow this polymerase to work as the catalyst, after having played this music for this unsuspecting water, the water
water.
The water freaking reforms the DNA, the entire sequence. It reforms it. And then wait, it gets better. It gets better. Okay. So at first it doesn't happen, but when they take the DNA fragments and they introduce it, the DNA begins to form with this catalyst present. Okay. Now, so we already have here an amazing feat, because across this ridiculous space and through different mediums, we have
and that's the thing, right? Right. To change up the mediums the way they do. See, the only thing that makes sense of all of that to me, again, is electricity. Electricity can neither be created nor destroyed, Yes.
which is where we're going actually.
Transformed.
So that's already beyond belief. But then what do they do? They reverse the exact same experiment back to France. Digitized signal from an actual physical molecularly formed DNA strand, blah 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 blah. Okay, and they send it back to France. Guess how freaking identical this DNA strand was to the original. What do you remember the percentage, Shell? I have it on hand. Do you remember how much it was?
I think it's pretty much all of it.
It was 98% identical.
That's crazy.
I mean, in scientific terms, on scientific levels, 98% accuracy is madness. I mean, it's
when you have something with as many steps as this process is, really,
and I should mention the precautions that they take at the very beginning too are insane. When they go into record, they're like, "Hey, we're not sure how this is going to work because we've never had any electronic equipment in the lab. So please turn off your phones." They took their batteries out of their phones to make sure. We're talking
and they
back in 2012.
They ended up making it so that they could only record with one certain camera because it had a really low
super low
emission coming out, and so it wouldn't interfere. Like it's a very impressive.
I will post this in the notes because it's very worth watching.
It is, and you it's very easy to find if you put in Luc
Montagnier.
How did you say his name? Montagnier,
I think that's
Montagnier, and water memory, like you pull them right up.
Yeah. So then they try to figure out, they're like, what the heck is actually happening? This is crazy. Like, how is this possible? Well, in the documentary, an individual, Mark Henry, who's a chemical and quantum physicist, basically explains that although the matter is removed, the physical matter is removed, the electromagnetic property or
signal.
Signal. I don't even know what the heck else to call it. Yeah, the electromagnetic signal. That's exactly right. Is trapped within oxygen molecules that act like a barrier. They automatically form this little ring, and they trap the signal in there.
See,
but it's because water is the medium, or otherwise they wouldn't stay there. That's insane. Okay, so there's no matter, but what's trapped in this little molecular, I don't know. I think they're just electrons. In fact, I don't remember if they were oxygen molecules or just electrons. I think they're just electrons. But nonetheless, the electromagnetic signal gets trapped in there with no physical material, and this is what they call coherent domain. Go look this up. It's really cool. So what does this mean? And this is where we're going to really get to it. The healing properties of water. This is where we're going into this right now. This is why I gave you guys this build up. And this is why we're talking about it being a potential catalyst or stimulus for making portals, which we're going to get to very soon as well. This has huge implications for health. And you know what's crazy?
Yeah,
I never heard a peep about this. This is
why in the world would you? Water is way too plentiful and cheap.
And petroleum, it costs money and makes money for people. So why would we have access to water, for God's sake?
Right.
They figure out, well, if we can use this coherent domain to trap things within water that are beneficial for human cells, which are molecular structures, but affect all those molecules at the subatomic level, right? At the quantum level, well, then that's a whole different ballgame. Now we're talking about something entirely different, which this chemical and quantum physicist starts asking himself, well, this is tough because most biologists, most doctors, most molecular biologists as well don't really deal in the quantum. They deal at the atomic level, right? And so because of this, they have to understand both. And that's another reason we're talking about these boxes,
Right,
this
'cause
bleed
that's a
over
crazy type of
that's
brain.
it really is. It takes a certain kind of person to understand that kind of thing. But the problem is that we refuse to allow people to dabble. And that's why things don't get learned. That's why we don't discover them. So essentially they figure out that they could figure out what the disease is or what the cure is, find out the signal, load it into water essentially, and administer that into the body and start using that for healing effects. And
So
sure enough, Mark
insane,
Henry says,
man.
why don't we do this? Well, because if there's no physical immediate potential for it for earnings, nobody wants to invest. Of course not.
No, it would put so many so many corporations out of business so
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
By the way, whatever his name is, Luc. He Montagnier. He won the Nobel Prize in 2008. 2008. So he's a virologist. Well, he was a virologist. Yeah, he died in 2022 at the age of 90. Go you, dude.
Yeah. Awesome.
But he was a virologist, and he is credited as one of the two people who isolated that HIV was the cause
Oh yeah, that's right.
of
That's what he did.
AIDS.
That's exactly what he did. That's exactly what he did.
So pretty
Crazy.
impressive, intelligent,
And
and to do that, and then to go and do this other experiment and keep pushing for it to be taken seriously. I mean, what did he have? He could literally rest on his laurels.
yeah,
That's where the term comes from. He is a laureate. He received the laurel crown
yeah,
of
literally, man.
the Nobel Prize. Like, and instead he, as an old dude, and he's fighting this fight for water. So it's very interesting. Um, and I guess me it really makes me think of Revelation.
Mhm.
Um, Revelation 22.
Yep.
So the very, very last chapter of the
Yeah.
Bible. Um, you know what? I could describe it, or I guess we could just
Yeah, we
read
can pull it
it.
up. It's for the sake of not having dead air, I'll just kind of elaborate a little bit, and I'll let Shell read it, because then she can elaborate it on it even better. Are you pulling it up, Shell?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Essentially, it talks about the waters feeding the trees whose leaves, I think it says the leaves itself, yeah, are for the healing of the nations once everything's been rectified, once God has come
Right.
again and set everything in its place and set things right as they are to be, as they were always meant to be. That's really what in fact, I don't know if that came to both our minds. It certainly came to my mind when I started listening to this stuff. And while she's doing that, I'm gonna elaborate real quickly. I continue to believe that God has simply established spiritual / scientific laws. They are just laws. That's what they are. And we have some actual modern examples of healings taking place with water. We have ancient ones as well. We have biblical ones and non-biblical ones. One that comes to mind in the modern era, there is a temple in Egypt. I'm going to have to look up the name of that temple, but I guess I can't remember it off the top of my head. But there's a huge source of water under this temple, and it's always running through and everything. And it's always running through that area, but it became stagnant. And two archaeologists were trying to figure out where the water is coming from, and they were trying to pump it out. They were trying to get it all out, but they just couldn't. It would just replenish. It automatically replenished itself, which was crazy. And this guy who needed glasses, he was one of the archaeologists, was on site, and he said that as he was in these waters, he started to feel better the more time he was in them, working in these waters. And I mean, these are kind of gross waters, frankly. I mean, think about how long that water's been stagnant there, this and that.
Right.
Well, he gets the notion that he's going to take a swig, and it heals his eyes.
Wow.
It heals his eyes. And what comes to mind is the pool. It's Bethesda, right? The pool at Bethesda. Bethsaida. Sorry, guys. My crappy white white American English supposition of how to pronounce Bethsaida. The man that tries to get into the waters when supposedly the angel flaps his wings and causes the waters to stir, and the first one to get to the waters is healed by those waters. Man, I think it is a spiritual law that waters can hold healing powers. Absolutely. What do you think we get the idea of not aging or reversing our aging through water? Like the sacred waters will allow our bodies to replenish. And yeah, man.
Right. What is that? The fountain of youth?
Fountain of youth. That's right. Yeah, I was thinking about that. And I didn't bring it up to you, but it was on my mind as we were researching all this stuff, man.
Yeah, I forget about that. Okay, is it there? Yes.
Yeah, I see it.
And the angel showed me the river of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb through the middle of the street of the city. Also, on either side of the river, the tree of life with its 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit each month. The leaves of the trees were for the healing of the nation. No longer will there be anything accursed, but the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will worship him.
Man, I love it.
Isn't that cool? And you know what? Because I remember, it's funny. I remember my youth leader. I don't know, when I was like 11 or 12, he new to our church, and we were singing, "I've got a river of life flowing out of me." And he's a tall guy, Mike, and when we do the spring up a well, he would jump, and like his feet would go higher than our pews, the top of our pews. And it's such a funny thing that I remember Sunday night church, and because that was like the fun laid back service.
Yeah.
When the Holy Ghost really moved. Yeah,
man.
But I had never put that river of life. I'd thought of it, and so many other aspects of what the Bible says about the rivers, well springs of life flowing out of us, and in whatever, and Jesus being, the living water. And if you knew who I was, you would ask me for living water. But it's about revelation. It's about the river that's gonna flow from the throne of Jesus in Zion, man, in Zion, from that holy mountain. Like, it's so crazy. It's not even crazy. It's so beautiful to me. Like, ooh, that makes my heart happy.
Yeah, man.
To think about that coming. So waters, being as we started at the very end of the book, let's go back to the beginning of the book and see what the Bible starts with. and that would be Eden's 4 rivers in Genesis 2. We've talked about this multiple times because it's such an interesting concept. I think most modern Western Christians don't think about Eden.
No.
Don't think about what it is, that it's a mountain and a garden, but it also had 4 headwaters, 4, which is really a lot. So if you have ever read the scripture and then gone to maps and looked, which I have, there are not many places where there are 4 headwaters, and a mountain and a lush garden. And honestly, I was telling Ricky, my personal um, theory on this is that, um, well, it's twofold. One, Eden was a thin place.
Ooh.
It was the council of Elohim. It was the council of Yahweh and his divine council. So it was in other realms as well, I think, as ours. So it was really a place that probably encompassed almost everything, everywhere, every time. It was the every. Um, but the rivers in it, there's the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Pishon, and the Gishon. And the Tigris and the Euphrates probably are familiar to everybody hearing this.
Yeah.
But the
Knows those two.
Pishon and the Gishon, or Gichon, Gihon, maybe even because that C is usually silent. It's just a sound.
Gechon. L'chaim. Sorry.
most theologians don't even really know what to do with it, with these two. So they suppose maybe it's the White Nile and the Blue Nile, or maybe it's the Nile and the Indus River. And the supposition is quite rampant, and we don't know. So somebody else's guess is as good as yours. I think that it's possible, just knowing how important the Mesopotamian area, the Middle East, has always been to God, that maybe Eden is now under what is the Red Sea, or the Persian Gulf, because you've got 2 of the rivers. You've got the Tigris and the Euphrates right there. If the Nile is possibly one, which it certainly could be, what's in between that is the Red Sea. But it wouldn't have been that way before the flood. But when the well springs opened up, the water levels rose, maybe it is now. But you know what? I mean, I'm not going to go on any archaeological digs to the Middle East and check this out. It's just my little, theory. Could somebody prove it wrong? Very possibly.
Sure.
Could somebody prove it right? Also possible.
Sure.
But it's just something that I thought was interesting. But why does the Bible even talk about those 4 rivers? There has to be a reason. The water mattered. And I don't know what you remember from 4th grade geography and world history, but I remember always being told that all big cities, all the cities were founded around water.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and it makes sense. You go, well, duh, of course. Except for what about Phoenix? But
Right. Hey, so let's
actually, no,
pause.
Phoenix has a huge underground water table.
Yeah, I bet it does,
Pause.
man.
Okay.
Yeah, let's pause real quick. Give me a sec.
Now, Phoenix has an underground water table that's really, really, really big. That's why
I mean,
Phoenix doesn't go through droughts like El Paso does.
oh wow, that's interesting. That makes a lot of sense because we were just talking about the vortices not that long ago. Remember the ones there in Arizona?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's interesting.
Um,
That's true.
there's some cool stuff about that kind of thing that I actually want to talk about here. And well, I don't want to steal. If you want to keep, if you wanted to mention another thing in particular,
No, go
that's
ahead.
okay. Cool.
I think I'll just go back and forth to
Yeah,
the
this is good
waters
jiving.
mentioned in the Bible. Yeah.
I like this kind of rhythm that we've got going. Um, there are some things that I do want to mention. We've looked at a lot of modern things, but I also want to not neglect ancient ideas about water because they are extremely informative to what we think now, what we watch a lot in movies, and frankly, what we ostracize or dismiss as, you know, middle-aged foolishness, so to speak. Um, ancient foolishness, I guess we could say.
Middle age.
Yeah, middle.
What are you saying, whippersnapper?
I mean, dude, like,
Ah,
I
ah.
got like 2 more years, and I'm gonna be way middle-aged. Like I'm about to hit my
Get off
70s.
my lawn.
I mean, I already say that.
Anyways.
No, I'm kidding. Right? Um,
Didn't weren't you on your ring the other day and you were like, who's going through my yard? Oh, it's just a neighbor kid. Oh no, that's my own kid.
yeah, yeah, I did say that. It's like, who the crap is this? Like, why are they walking all over? Oh, it's my son. It's okay.
That's so funny.
That's okay. That's acceptable. I guess it's important to think about some ancient concepts too about water because I think that they will probably really inform us about current concepts that we have and have neglected, like I just said. So, water in the ancient. Oh, are you intentionally? Oh, okay. Water in the ancient world symbolizes femininity. It's tied to emotions. Obviously, it's tied to tidal changes. No
No
surprise there.
gosh.
No, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just literally like that. That's the way the ancients thought about it. It's also, now this is interesting. It's tied to the idea directly of amniotic fluid, and it's analogous to the dream life and our soul. That's very interesting. Um,
Hmm.
in Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism, Native Americans, shamanistic religions, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they regarded water as an activating substance, which is what you and I had talked about. And this is really the core concept of my understanding. And I think that you and I largely agreed on this idea. It is for the purpose of activating what? Regeneration, which we clearly just talked about,
Right.
the washing of sins, the ultimate mystery of death and rebirth. That's
Absolutely.
very interesting to me.
Very much areas that I wanted to go to too. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
super cool stuff. The river Gange, I think it's Gange,
The Ganges
Ganges.
River,
Is it
the
Ganges?
Ganges
I don't know how the heck
or
to say it.
Ganges River.
Um, it's believed to be the creator of all life because it flows through down Shiva's hair. And it contains the longest river. It is the longest river there in India. And I thought this was really interesting. Something that they do there in India is that the cisterns will ritualistically, on certain occasions, be like filled back up or emptied down, and they all have to do with the recognition of power that water has. In the Buddhist legend, Kathmandu Valley in Nepal is where You'll like this analogy. Where a self-sprung lotus is seen by the Bodhisattva Manjurshi, who sees waters and allows them to recede for access to the worship of the lotus. So there's too many waters in the way, and he moves them out of the way. Aguas Calientes, not to be confused with the name of the city in Mexico, warm waters, that is, or hot waters, is the rushing Urubamba River around Machu Picchu. And the Incan emperor apparently revered it because of its special magnetic qualities, because it arises from the depths of the Andes and has basically regenerative powers. Maybe that's where we get, like the idea of the fountain of youth, right? Water and emotions are associated with the moon's phases, its light, its darkness. It's identified with the soul. I thought that was really interesting. And water is also not just a physical, but a spiritual conductor. A spiritual conductor.
So
you sound like you have something to say.
I do, even though I was really enjoying that fudge pudding, because I wanted it for days.
Oh, fudge.
Some good JELLO. So let's go to water and the soul.
Okay.
Because I was thinking of the river Styx and Charon, who, the ferryman who takes you across the river Styx.
Not the lady that accuses you of parking poorly in the parking lot.
I don't know. You know what? It's possible that Charon
resemblance
is the offspring of Charon.
Hey, do you want me to tell you my legit Karen story real quick before we continue?
Yes, absolutely. And then I can finish my pudding, and then we'll talk about spirits.
No joke. About a year ago, I don't remember why I had to run to Walmart for whatever reason, but I was with my kiddos, and my wife was not with me for whatever reason. It was just me and the kiddos. And so that's right. We were gone to look at something, and she was at some other store, and we're going to go pick her up. So I took both my kids by the hand, because regardless of their age, until they are of very much of age, I grabbed my kids as we crossed the street. And so we were walking from we weren't walking from the door of Walmart. We had just walked out of Walmart, and I was headed towards where my car was, so that when I crossed the street, I would be right where my car was. Makes a lot of sense to me.
It does.
And so I grabbed my kiddos. There was no one coming. As a grown adult, I looked both ways, made sure that we weren't going to die, and started walking towards my car. Right? Well, I guess we're about halfway across the street to get to the car when a car from where Walmart is. Granted, I walked away from Walmart towards my car, okay, on purpose so that I can get to where I needed to go. So some person starts driving up to me, unsettlingly fast for a parking lot. And I'm like, what is this person's problem? And so I'm almost to my car when some lady rolls down her window and starts screaming at me. And I'm like, what? I'm crossing the street with my kids. What is the issue? She's like, wow, you're in the way. I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, you're in the way. There's a crosswalk for a reason. I'm like, are you serious? I was like, there's no one on the road. That's why I waited till there was no one on the road, so that people like you didn't come yell at me. What is wrong with you? But she just starts going off. There's a crosswalk. You don't know what you're teaching your children, this and that. I mean, she was trying to lecture me. And I go, lady, I was like, they're not your kids. Two, what in the world? And then she started swearing at me. She starts swearing at me, and my kids
in
are
front
right
of
there
your kids.
as I'm putting my kids in the car. And she's like, well, you're being a terrible example for your kids. I'm like, you're being a terrible example for my kids, swearing at me in front of my face while I'm trying to get my kids in the car. And she just kept going and going and I was like, lady, I don't know what your deal is. you seem to be very, very disturbed that I didn't cross on the crosswalk and that I'm the bane of humanity because I didn't do so. You are a strange, weird woman. Like, it's
Please
just,
go. Have a good day.
yeah,
Away
it was
from me.
I didn't think people like that existed, but they do exist. It was the most bizarre thing ever. I was
We
like,
just try to avoid them.
and my son was like, Dad, that was a total Karen. She was such a Karen. I think I called her that too. I was like, why are you being a Karen? Like, what's the issue? It was so funny, dude.
You can't
Crazy
call a
old.
Karen a Karen. You'll totally tick them off.
I
But
mean,
oh my
you also
gosh.
don't. And I told the lady, which is the funniest thing to me, is that she drove up. I'm like, why are you driving like a maniac trying to hit me and my kids? Like, I'm just trying to get to my car. And she's like, well,
Right?
because what you're doing is wrong. I'm like, what
Get
you're
thee
doing is
behind me,
really
Satan.
dangerous. I'm just getting in my car, dude. Anyway, Karen and the River Styx.
Don't pay the ferryman. Don't even set a price. Don't pay the ferryman until he gets you to the other side.
Yeah, yeah.
Words to live by? I don't
A
know.
way to die with honor. I don't know.
Supposedly you're already dead. It's your soul, right? Being taken to the underworld. But like really, I don't know of a culture that does not consider bodies of water liminal,
Yeah,
especially rivers.
yeah. I
So
mean, Anubis, right? That's a prime
right,
example. Yeah, takes you down.
Ryan
Oh,
Pitterson, I got it right.
woohoo,
I had to look at his book right now and make sure.
Mr.
Um,
Pitterson.
he has a very interesting viewpoint.
Unique.
Yeah, it's really good. Most uh, most modern biblical scholars who choose to find out anything about the Watchers, the Nephilim,
The unseen
whatever,
realm.
right? Have a tendency to believe, according to what they what we can read in the book of First Enoch, that Sem Jaza and his crew um, came down to mankind from Mount Hermon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very common belief. Um, I have no problem with it. It's what my Kaiser subscribed to.
Yeah.
It's definitely it has some weight, some merit to it.
Yeah.
Um, but Pitterson says this in Judgment of the Nephilim, which is a really, really good book. I know you know it, and for our viewers, it's a really good book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've heard us say it before. His belief is that it wasn't Hermon, but it was the Jordan River. Um, that was the place where the angelic beings um, crossed into our realms to procreate with the daughters of mankind. Just put it that way, I guess, because try to think of how to
Quite
say it.
literally.
So, here are a few things about the Jordan River. So, the meaning of the Jordan River is it goes down or it flows down. You know what? I should have written it down. Descent, something like that. But I've got my beautiful Young's concordance right here. So I'm just going to look Hij. So we'll just go, you know what? You got to love a good old book sometimes.
Oh, I love lots of old books.
I know.
books are awesome.
They are pretty great. So Jordan, oh, am I going to be able to read that, Shelley?
Going down to the river. Speaking of Jordan.
Right.
Let's see. Jordan. Let's see.
This is going to give me
To go down. It
to
literally
go
means
down.
to go down. Yeah. And refers to the River Jordan flowing towards the Dead Sea. A beautiful title with a rich history. Baby Jordan will undoubtedly wear their name with pride and confidence as they flow through life. That's where that comes from.
Well, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
It also goes through the valley between Lebanon and Mount Hermon. So Mount Hermon is right there. So I don't necessarily think that you have to subscribe to the one over the other. It's possible that it's both. But here are some of the things that the Bible says happened on or around or through the Jordan River and the Jordan River Valley.
Name them.
Genesis, aside from the name, Genesis 13:10 tells us that the place that Abram and Lot came to was the Jordan River Valley, and it was a well-watered plain like the garden of God. Genesis 28 tells us that Bethel was just due west of the Jordan, and that's where Jacob saw Jacob's ladder. He saw the angels coming and going. In Joshua 3, and this is like really, really cool scripture. In the 3rd chapter of Joshua, after Moses has gone to the unseen realm, and Joshua is now the leader of Israel, and it's time to finally go in and possess the promised land. They cross the Jordan into Canaan at Gilgal. And the place where they do it is referred to now as Beth Abara, which is the house of the passage. But how at the beginning of this episode I was talking about, man, I never once said anything about the crossing the Sea of Reeds or the Red Sea by Moses. I guess that's one of the stories pretty much everybody is familiar with, how God stacked up the walls of water. And honestly, when they got the Israelites got to the Jordan, they were like, where's Aaron's staff? Should we take it out of the ark? Is God gonna part these waters sometime today? And then God, in typical God fashion, it says, no, that's not how we're doing it today, guys. I know that's how I did it last time, but I don't put myself on repeat. So he sends, well, he tells them how to line up, and he sends the ark first, right? And as soon as the Levites' feet who are touching the Jordan, as soon as they touch the Jordan, shoom, the water separates and they walk across. God has them do two really interesting things. He has them make a cairn of remembrance, or an altar, right, with 12 huge stones that should still be at Bethabara today. And he has them take 12 great stones and place them on that path of, I assume, sand, mud, dirt, that they had walked across. So he left the waters parted long enough for them to do this and put those rocks down and let the water go back. And those rocks under the Jordan were to be a remembrance for the Israelites who never got to cross over. because of their murmuring, their complaining, their general rebelliousness against
Right.
God. Um, and it's funny because my husband and I, we've been reading so much about this, being as we're in the beginning parts of the Bible as we're reading through it together. And I usually go on a tirade because I get so irritated with the Christians who are like, I would never be that way. Oh, those children of Israel, and they're grumbling. Well, why didn't they just get in line? And I'm like, we would have been exactly that way. Oh man, I want some cucumbers and onions.
You forget
You
that.
know?
People get pissed off because their internet goes out.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, just so much of the stuff. We are the modern equivalent, all of us, of Karen, compared to patient Susie or whomever. I don't know. I'm making stuff up
the,
now.
the good thing is that God made a crosswalk and they actually used it. So
Oh my gosh, you brought it there. Well done. That's impressive.
I'll have to make that into a clip now.
You will.
Karen clip.
The Karen clip. So, the fun thing about this in Bethabara is that when John the Baptist, Jean Baptiste, because Ricky got to tell everybody all the names, all cool. So there you go. Jean Baptiste.
I'm not. I hate French.
I'm not a fan either, but
Not the French, just French.
right, the language. When JB is doing his ministry, preparing the way of the Lord in the wilderness,
That's
quite
so funny. I thought
literally.
you were going to say Jaque Benveniste. I thought that's who you were saying. JB.
No, JB,
Yeah,
Jean Baptiste.
José Baptiste.
He's baptizing at Bethabara, and the Pharisees and the Sadducees are giving him a hard time, right? And he says to them, he says pretty much, you know what? You guys are not that great. Yahweh can raise a nation from these rocks right here. And I just like that. I like how uh, the Bible brings it back full circle.
Yeah.
But with the angels coming and going right there at the Jordan, the Jacob witnesses two different times, same basic area. First that time, when he's heading to Laban, and he sees the angels coming and going, and then when he wrestles with Yahweh in particular, um and God dislocates his hip, but also gives him a blessing and says, "From now on, your name is Israel." That was on his way back from Laban to first meet with Esau, and then to establish his home and his land.
Mm-hmm.
But when John baptizes his cousin Jesus in the dirty Jordan River, man, the Holy Spirit descends upon him right there. And so there seems to really be something about Jordan being kind of a highway where the angels come and go. Um
Yeah.
Elijah on the day that God was taking him, and everybody knew it, man. Like Elijah knew it, Elisha knew it. The other dudes down the road who also were followers of God, they knew it because they say to Elisha at one point, they say, "Hey, did you know God's coming to take your master today?" And he's like, "Yeah, fool, I know. Shut up." You know? Well, I mean, as you do, when your mentor is about to leave you, and that's a scary thought.
Yeah, no kidding.
But so that whirlwind, the chariot of fire, if you prefer, although I think the chariot of fire was more as a spectacle, although there seems to be the chariot of fire and the whirlwind motif in the Bible a wee bit.
Yeah.
Elijah's taken up, and then Elisha gets the double anointing right there,
Yeah.
right at the Jordan. The Jordan River just seems to truly be a place of a lot of crossover activity, if you
Mhm.
will. Going to the healing, we see Naaman, when he becomes leprous, being told, go dunk in the Jordan 7 times, and he's like, "Seriously, man, is that gonna make me more
Yeah.
dirty?"
Yeah.
But
He's
he
already
doesn't.
healed.
He's healed.
Sure.
Um,
You know who I'm thinking of, not necessarily as a healing property, but portalistic, or if nothing else, at least again facilitating spiritual energy, right? Spiritual flow is Philip with the eunuch.
yeah, that's where I thought you were gonna go. That's,
Man.
Acts 8. This is literally one of my most favorite
Imagine
stories.
being that eunuch. He's like,
Where'd dude go, man? The heck? Yeah.
yeah,
Philip's like, Star Trek ain't got nothing on me, man. I didn't even need Scotty.
I ain't need no
I
Scotty. I got
I
Gotti.
oh gosh, it's so bad, so bad. Yeah, that wasn't the Jordan River though. That was just like some little
That was
pool.
Durway Fountain near Halhul.
There
That
you
old
go.
chestnut. Yeah, that old
Yeah,
chestnut.
there, right there. Okay.
Yep.
Um, and I've got that down. Like in my biblical
Which
sources.
actually that lends a little bit more credence towards the concept that water in general does have portalistic tendencies, but it needs to be. It would seem that it needs to be imbued with spiritual quality or spiritual power first, right? Like, I don't know. That's kind of
Maybe,
what I
maybe
think.
not. I mean,
Maybe, maybe
it's
not.
a baptism, so because that's what Philip does, right? Philip
Right.
baptizes the
Yeah, yeah,
eunuch,
absolutely.
just like and John baptizes Jesus.
Yeah.
Um, and baptism's a big deal. Like we don't treat baptism the way I think it is supposed to be treated.
Certainly not.
There are plenty of people who have made confession and have not been baptized, and then we get into the whole sprinkling of water, total submersion, uh babies, blah 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 blah. But it seems like in the
Like
in the
Kat
New
Von
Testament,
D.
right? Like cat the people, oh, her hands weren't totally
Her
submerged.
hand didn't go under. She's still demonic.
It's not real. It's like, speaking of Karens, oh my gosh.
Christian Karens. God
Christian
love them.
Karens, they are the worst. There is a term called GCBs, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but
Good
I
Christian
mean,
brethren.
yeah, good Christian somethings. Just think of big, high, blonde hairdos. And vipers' tongues, short dresses. Yep. Man, we can be so ugly. It's so awful to me. Um, but we're not gonna go and talk about Kat Von D's
Nope.
baptism tonight
Nope.
anyway.
Nope.
Um, but the baptism, like people they said, how do I follow Jesus? I believe this, I want it. What do I have to do?
Mm-hmm.
And what they did, they didn't say some repeat after me. This is a sinner's prayer, and then you're going to get your golden ticket into heaven. It's not what happened. Like they said, okay. I buy into what you're selling. I believe Jesus is Messiah. Let's get baptized right now. Let's go
Mm.
find some water. And boom, they did it.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
I was baptized when I was 12, and I've been thinking like, huh. I mean, I have repented. I have been baptized. There's nothing that says you can't be baptized more than once. As a matter of fact, there is some um teachings in the church, and I'm not very familiar with them. I have to find out more because nobody really teaches deeply on baptism. This
No,
is
it's a
one of those
pretty
things that
misunderstood concept, I think.
I think
I,
so too, and it
I
bothers me.
yeah, I dealt really have. If we come back to water, we're probably definitely going to be hitting on that because it's a very ancient practice,
It
frankly.
is, and it
I
has
mean,
tons and tons of power. It's the
yeah,
mikvah, man. It's a big stinking deal.
yeah, it sure
And
is.
we don't understand, and I think part of it is because we're looking at it through the lens of modern Westerners,
Yeah, we refuse
modern
to engage
Western
with the idea that
Christians,
water could contain any kind of power or memory or spiritual quality or anything like that.
or oh, what God said in the Old Testament isn't for the New Testament. Yes, it is. It is
Oh,
though. Like
so
we miss
why
so
would we
much.
include it?
Right. Well, because there's baptism in the New Testament, it's everywhere. But Christians don't get that it's based off of the mikvah, which was um, used so much in the Old Testament. And again, man, if you have not read the whole Bible for yourself, it's tedious, y'all. But do it
You know
because
what? I
you
don't know,
miss
man. I'm
that
not.
it's tedious.
I'm not convinced it's tedious anymore. Like
I mean,
I'll be reading Leviticus now, and I'm like, why did this happen? What's going on here?
right. Well, remember
Why
the
was
other
this
day
ritual
when I
so
got
important?
so excited about the stupid liver, the long lobe of
Oh
the
no,
liver?
that's absolutely fascinating, and it's funny that you mentioned that. I literally was reading something to that effect in the morning, and you probably already know this if you're reading Gilbert's book, but I my Bible, that chronological Bible I've been reading through,
Mhm.
I was really really impressed because they talk about how they did the divination with the liver. They would look at the bumps on the liver and they would read them, and I
Yeah.
was like, what? That's crazy. That is that is crazy. I mean,
It
that
was
is
it
interesting
was a
stuff.
big deal, and, there's a name for that, the divination from entrails.
Livination, liver nation.
Liver nation, you're dumb.
It's pretty
But,
fascinating.
and I agree with you, I shouldn't say it's tedious because that feeds into that misconception.
It's tedious
Um,
because we
we're undisciplined.
we're undisciplined, but also like I mean, this is I'm just speaking specifically for myself. When when I understood that there were giants involved, that's all I'm gonna say. Like the Bible changed to me, man.
Me
The
too.
Bible was no longer a cardboard cutout of a religion. I was like, dude, there is some substantial evidence that bears
Right.
very
And
true in what I'm reading.
so much of it when you realize that there is a fallen divine council, when you realize that the world was apportioned to the sons of God, the
Yeah,
Elohim,
yeah,
and they chose to be worshipped in
and
God's place.
and
Most of
they
them,
have
maybe not all of them,
sure,
but
and they have
most of
direct
them.
influence on things that we're doing,
Yeah.
and I might go as far as to say as vice versa. Probably, I
But
mean, it
but
makes sense to
even
me.
absolutely, but not even that, but just reading the Bible, knowing that, then you're like, "Okay, so why this?" Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, so when Jesus walked on the water, he was doing what? Oh, so when God parted the water, he was taking away whose power showing him ain't oh no bail
yeah,
got what
yeah,
I've got.
yeah.
And that's the thing. And eventually we'll get there. Man, that's going to be something wild. I guess I'll put out here, Ricky and I want to write a Bible study specifically from the divine council
Yeah.
worldview.
Yeah, man.
And it's an endeavor. It's not going to be easy, but I'll tell you what, it's really cool because just reading through the Bible with just that knowledge, just knowing that there are little g gods muddling things up and that the Bible was written the way it was to basically thumb the nose at those deities that decided they were going to try to take God's
You know,
place.
I think I don't know if you watched my Marco the other day that God gave me this just kind of resounding revelation when I was just, believe it or not, literally sitting and meditating and just hanging out with God, but like actually meditating. It was very cool. Um,
You can't
within the
say actually
confines.
meditating and not be more specific because people are going to
I know.
envision you doing
That's
this.
why I was just about to qualify it.
Okay.
Meditating on God, but actually meditating on God, because a lot of times we think about God, or a lot of times we pray on God, a lot of times we wait on God, but it was just a different type of prayer. I was just meditating on God, and he was talking to me, man, and I had just finished watching or listening, I guess, a really good episode by Camp Herman. I recommend you guys check them out. It's
Oh, I have not yet.
different than Shell and I for sure, and actually, to me, it follows a lot more of like the common podcast flow, and I'm not against that. I don't want to do that. That's not what I want to do, at least not right now in my life anyway. But there was some really cool information, and part of that was that I was really left under the impression, not that they said this, but I was under the impression that God's intention was never to write a book for us, because he was talking to us. He was
Right.
always talking to us. And it was crazy to me, because God was like, yeah, man, he was telling me, he's like, it was not my intention. And I asked him, was it your intention to write a book? He's like, no, for what? Like, I was already talking to you guys. Like, that's why, because it doesn't make sense to me, right? What, like, a lot of people complain, well, the Bible was written so late. Well, yeah, there was no reason to write a Bible if God
Right.
talks to mankind one-on-one. What's the purpose in writing it down? And we can get into that whole section, because you guys know about linguistics and how much I'm super passionate about that. But what was really cool to me is that God was like, and God has told me this on a particular occasion. I was like, man, God, I remember praying one time. I was like, Lord, it is so hard for me to pray, but it's so easy to read the Bible. And God was super specific, and he brought this back to my memory when he was talking to me about this. He was like, well, yeah, dude, because when you read it, it's on your terms, and when you talk to me, it's on my terms.
Mm.
And I went, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
So God never had the intention for us to read stuff. Not that it couldn't be done. Obviously it
Right.
can, and not that it's not useful. But
Well, you know what? So I
anyway,
have a friend, and she's not much longer for this realm.
yeah.
And I was thinking she always does a Christmas letter every year. So I was thinking, you know what? While I still have the opportunity to tell her before she goes to the unseen realm, which she will do, I have no worries. I'll see her again in heaven.
Yeah.
But I want to write down a letter telling her what she has meant in my life.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about that, and like I'm good with words. I can turn a phrase very well. And it's something I can do. And in my mind I was thinking all these things, and then I was like, no, Lord, please help me to remember this when I'm writing it down. Um because I don't want it to come out of me now when I can't write it down and I'm going to forget it. But I want to tell her the things about her that I appreciate, that are a blessing, that were such an encouragement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell her in heaven when I watch her get her crowns. I really hope we get to watch each other's crowning because there's
Yeah,
some
man.
people, man, I am gonna be making a ruckus for those people who have are part of
Fought the
my
good fight.
journey. But I was thinking about that, and it's not, I haven't had to do it before. Yeah, I can just tell
Mm,
her, "Hey, I love you. You're such an encouragement. I want to be like you when I grow up." Just those things, and those are all things that I have said to her on more than one occasion, and I have meant wholeheartedly.
mhm.
But I just want that to write that down for her so that she has it, because there's something very
Sacred.
precious
Yeah.
about being able to reread something
Mhm,
and to
mhm.
touch it. And then not only that, but it's something that somebody else, her family, can look at and see that and be like, "Oh yeah, that was so true. Oh yeah." And it touches them as well. And I think that's how God's word is for us. I think you're right. When we're face to face to him, he talks to us, and we're lucky at the time we live that we can look at his word and make sure that what we're hearing is in alignment.
Right.
But Moses didn't need to write it down. Moses didn't write down the law for himself. He wrote it down for the ones who
Yeah.
refused to
I
go
mean,
see God
he
face to face. They
he
said, "No, no, no, we're
exactly.
going to stay here. You go do that.
Exactly.
Could you please put something over your face, please? Because you're making us real uncomfortable, dude."
His face was like freaking the headlights on a car, man.
Right.
Crazy. Dang. We got way off topic. It was very cool, but we got
Yeah,
way off topic.
we did. We did get off
Was
topic.
was there anything you were gonna um
The only other thing I was going to do is talk about Ezekiel and Daniel, both their angelic um, uh,
encounters?
encounters, and the times that they had the taking up into the heavens, and their visions of the throne
Hmm.
um were by rivers.
Oh,
The
then hold that thought then. Um,
Okay.
because I want to get through just a few I think that are really important things. Well, by rivers, you said, right?
Yeah. Oh, I also what I have to do is tell you the rivers.
Do it.
Ezekiel was the Chubar River, which is in Iraq,
Mm.
and Daniel's encounters were by the Tigris.
Hmm.
And so,
Hmm.
um,
Wow.
yeah, right.
It's
And
very
so I was
telling.
like, "Where's the Chubar River, man?" And I tried looking, and it's not like a huge river, but it's a river in Iraq.
Oh,
So,
that's interesting, man. Especially the tigers. That's really interesting.
right.
Um, that's very cool. I guess the only other thing I really wanted to touch on was some uses that ancient, uh, even modern cultures have for what for how. Yeah, maybe that's where we should go with this. Like how water acts as a lubricant. We talked about this, right? How it acts as a catalyst for spiritual movement and
Right.
obviously scientific movement. We talked long and fine about water memory and scrying and all this stuff, and I think largely that was well covered. But there are a few topics that I just want to hit on, and we can close it out after that, unless there's anything else you think of. Um, oh, oh, there is something I do want to that I think we just almost
Oh.
missed the the extraterrestrial phenomenon. We'll hit
Oh
that at the end.
gosh, no kidding. Yeah.
At the end. Okay. So there's some stuff I
I
want to talk
mean,
to you
I
guys about.
kind of talked about it with Daniel. I mean,
Yeah, a little bit.
Elijah. Oh, and Ezekiel, and
I mean, yes, and no.
kinda.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do know.
Okay. Um. Okay. Geez, there's like a bajillion things that I had written down, man. But it's all good. I'm not gonna waste you
It's
guys'
a
time.
deep subject,
It's
yo.
deep waters, deep cries out to deep. Um. So I just want to mention some beliefs I think are really important or interesting. There's a place called Creation Lakes and Waterfalls. This is in Oregon, and the Klamath tribe lives there. And they believe that in an earlier era of creation, the chiefs of the underworld and the world above fought each other. And the lake was the result of their pitched battle. Now, this is fascinating because in reality, the lake was actually formed over 7,000 years ago when a volcanic eruption happened.
It's a water-filled in caldera.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But interesting that the backstory is gods and titans fought. Hmm. No, never heard that one before.
Strange. And interesting that it was 7,000 years ago. It's very interesting. I'm not making any implications. I'm just making observations.
Right.
This particular body of water is really interesting because they use it for vision quests. Now, if you don't know anything about vision quests are super, super common in Native America. I'm not talking to you, Shaw. I'm sure you know very well about that kind of stuff. You probably actually can explain it better than I can. But vision quests were essentially, as I understand it, something that was used, especially by young men, to kind of initiate themselves as men, but also to
Right.
make that connection with the Great Spirit. Am I right? Is that basically, yeah? And so it was
Or
really
in times of trouble, when
true.
they needed a big answer.
Yeah. That's very true. Yes, there's several occasions, especially like when there was a drought or a famine or things like that. They would go on a vision quest. That's absolutely right. Oftentimes those vision quests were extremely in extreme levels and styles of fasting. So like very,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
intense. And what I thought was really interesting, super cool about this was that, I mean, this, I'm not gonna lie, scares the bejesus out of me to think about it, but it's very cool. Is that the
Oh,
shaman?
this is a nighttime thing.
Yeah, the
Dude, I
shaman.
would never firm pass.
Yeah, well, the shaman would go into this essentially caldera, just like you were saying, right? That's at the tippy top of the mountain, and the mountain's basically chopped off, and so it's filled in at the top. So it's like essentially a giant valley filled in with water. And his job as the shaman is at night, in the dead of night, to go into the waters, deep into the waters, to commune with the gods. That is some
No.
creepy stuff, yo.
I grew
Um,
up with a pool in my backyard, and we would go swimming in the dark in the pool,
no,
and that was
no,
creepy. That was as
no.
creepy as I was getting. Um, I cannot even imagine being in a larger body of water where you can't see the bottom and in the dark. Like it is
Yeah.
just not happening.
Um, the Huron Indians. These are the Indians there in Niagara Falls. That refers to, the place is called the place where thunder strikes. And the legend tells of a spirit of Lake Ontario who is a, wait for it, serpent. And when it tried to leave the lake, the creator struck the serpent so violently that even today the serpent spirit of the lake roars at the mere memory of the blow. Whoa, that's crazy, yo.
So hold on. Matching story. This is rabbinical teachings from Genesis 1. So
I'll take the
when
beginning of creation for $500.
when God hovers over, the spirit of God hovers over the face of the deep. Um, there is creation stories that he was fighting Leviathan, that he was just overtaking and destroying the Leviathan, and then he created the world. So Leviathan represents like chaos, which same as that other creation story you just told. It's really, really interesting to me when the Native
Americans are so cool.
Americans have, when they have a lot of the great creator stories.
Yeah.
The creator came to us, the creator God, and they're animistic and pretty polytheistic, but
Well,
there's still
sort
a
of.
head.
Yeah.
There's still the creator God.
Well, some are way more polytheistic than others. Is a better way, I guess, to
Right.
say it. Yeah.
But there seems to be an understanding of the head
Concept.
God who created everything else, and the other gods were created beings.
Well, even in ancient, even in Mesopotamian literature, right? Like you'll have the one god that, and then the other god, and then even though those gods were overthrown and overcome, there was still a source. There was always a source, and that's what's funny to me, because
you see the common threads again and again. Absolutely.
Yeah, but even
like
the
there's
ancients,
a conspiracy.
There totally is. But even the ancients, Shell, I mean, there's such hubris in the West. I mean, there's just an unbelievable hubris, because even the ancients were willing to acknowledge a beginning source, and modern Westerners are inflexible when it comes to anything else but the material realm being anything. I'm like, you believe in the quantum, but you don't believe in.
Yeah, I mean, we take the spiritual out of Christianity. That's what the problem is. That's why we have a podcast, because
I know.
that is what we're trying to combat, is that that ideology that Christianity isn't spiritual, that God is not spiritual, that the world is not full of the supernatural, that our supernatural God created.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. And refusing to, in my opinion, refusing to understand that the elements have very specific purposes, like, is just bizarre to me, and that they have like spiritual purposes as well. Like,
that they're
like
multifaceted.
You said about, that's really what it is, right? That they're poly. I mean, they're multi-use. What's the word for that? It's late, man. Brain's going.
It is late. I know. I can't think of it either.
Multiple uses. I mean, we'll just go with that. Multifaceted, right? That it's an entirely. Is that what you said? That's what you said. It's got multiple uses in any case. It's crazy to me, man. Like, water should be no different than any other thing, and the fact that I don't know, man. We just treat God's creation with just such
disdain,
commonality.
Yeah.
There's no sacredness in the way we do things.
Right.
You know what?
Everything is profaned.
Yeah. I think I'm actually going to cut it there. The point is that there are many stories that are biblical and extra biblical, pagan, Christian, all that, everything in between. Water seems to be a type of conduit. It really does. There's, like, honestly, I think I could probably talk for another hour with all the notes I have, but I don't think it's,
right.
needs overstating. Like, that's the point. Water water was put here and used. Oh, I do want to mention the aliens thing and the other thing.
Oh yeah.
It was put here and is used by nefarious and by good forces all together, right?
Because it's a tool.
As it's a tool. That's exactly right. So to clarify my points, me personally, I don't believe water is alive, but I think that there is definitely an ability that God could make water alive, or gods could make water alive. I can't say yes or no. It's just a supposition. But what seems to be very, very clear and kind of ring true in all circumstances is that water is a spiritual conductor as well as a physical conductor. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And having said that, I will let Shell kind of well, let me say this and then I'll let you have the floor. One thing that I stumbled across with all these ancient musings is that every megalithic site seems to have tons of water running through or under it, being surrounded by water. And in specifically, the way that these waters cross tend to create vortices, which allow for more spiritual conduction. And so I think it's, there is really something to, like, even this guy right here, right? This guy who's spouting out water. That's why we get the toil. What is it? Toil. Bubble and trouble.
Boil. No, I
boil,
can't.
toil,
Because you
trouble.
ruined it.
There you go. Boil, well,
There
toil,
you go.
trouble. Yeah, I mean, there's something to, like, the mixture, the water, the need for water to lubricate the movement of spiritual occurrences.
Well,
Frankly.
even life is in the blood, but the
Yeah, it's
water's in
mostly
the
water. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
like for sure.
You.
Okay, so I have always loved the Bermuda Triangle, and I
Oh.
really tried to have something be there. Like I searched and searched, but statistically, it is not an anomaly. There are some documented cases of disappearances, um, especially the Foo Fighters.
Great band.
Those are not the ones I meant, but the actual
I have no idea.
World War II, Japanese fighters disappeared over that area. We had, um, gosh, I didn't write this down, and I thought I would remember it, but there is
Famous last words.
a group of um, uh, American, I don't know, fighter jets that disappeared over the Bermuda Triangle. It's possible that they all ran out of gas, like in the swampy areas of Florida or, over the ocean. I'm not sure. But I really looked and I wanted there to be something because really, I remember being a kid and Bermuda
Yeah.
Triangle mystery.
It's such a
Oh,
big thing. Yeah.
but nah, I could not find anything of any kind of merit at all. Um, the lights, so the UFOs, what else are we calling them?
UAPs.
USOs and UAPs.
Well, that's super
Um,
important. That, like, the linguistic terminology and the reason for the modification is really, really important.
for the
I don't
UAP,
necessarily
yeah.
agree with it, but yes,
Yeah, I mean, I get why they're going there.
yeah.
But the a USO is just an unidentified sub
Is
submerged object.
oh, right, that's right.
Instead of it being a flying
Yeah,
object, although it is also flying, whatever, fine. There is a lot of activity of UAPs. We'll just go with UAPs.
yeah. No,
Uh,
there's a reason for they're using that. I still, I mean, I'm. If you understand the reason, I understand why it's being said that way, but I still think
oh,
UFO just is just
right,
as
because the
relevant.
orbs.
Right.
Because the implication is more that an orb might be some form of more organic
Hadn't thought
thing
about that.
than a vehicle. Um, so fine, UAP unidentified
No, it's unidentified aerial phenomena.
aerial phenomena. No,
Well,
anomalous
anomalous phenomena. Sorry.
phenomena.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
Which
not aerial.
really phenomena is almost anomalous anyway, but okay, fine. Cool
Yeah,
beans,
it's
whatever.
very stupid. Well, but
A lot of them going into bodies of water, oceans, lakes. I don't know about rivers so much, but maybe coming out of the same. Um, I didn't really go in and dig up dates and times. I feel like everybody knows about the Nimitz Tic Tac UFO
yeah.
that went under the water in the northern Atlantic.
Mhm.
Um, Honestly, to me, these are so much like um, Elijah's uh, chariot of fire, or fiery horse and chariot, the wheel within the wheel, with the eyes, which I don't know, they seem like windows, lit windows. It's probably what they're trying to
Eyes or
describe there.
lights or
I
windows or
don't
lights.
think it's ancient aliens. I think, and I don't know how well we have communicated this. We talk about it quite frequently. We
Yeah.
know what we think, and so I think we assume that we have communicated
Yeah.
it, but just in case, um, we think that angels aren't winged menfolk. That's not what the Bible says angels are like. There's a one particular type
Type
of
of
angel
yeah.
that has 6 wings, with 2 it
That's noted.
covers its face, 2 it covers its genitals and its feet, and with 2 it flies. Um, but that is not the standard. Standard angels, we get our ideology of angels from the Romans,
Yeah.
from, in particular,
Our
Nike.
our iconic our iconism, right? Our
Right.
yeah.
Iconography.
Iconography. Thank you. Yeah. Um, the the only thing I want to add to that, because I agree with all of it, is just that the term UAP um, seems to be, I wouldn't say the government grappling. I would say
It
the government trying to
it's
stay on
them
top of stuff.
yeah, it's deceitful
Yeah, it is,
of
and
them. It is. It's them trying to muddy
the waters.
the yeah.
Um, but
But they're trying to confuse the language so
oh,
that
sure.
people are caught on the wrong foot.
Well, and the issue here is that it is interesting that you and I'm going to stick to UFO. That's fine for me. That
Okay.
UFOs tend to be around bodies of water, large bodies of water, and the reason that they were relabeled UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomenon, is because there is no change in physics as they go from one medium to another. So they are
Right.
transmedium
That's
objects.
right. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, they go into the water and come out of the water with
as if
no
nothing.
splash,
Yeah,
no wave, nada.
and there's nothing
Um,
affected by in the water.
that's right. I
You know,
forgot about that. There's no um gush of winds. They just, yeah, you're right. Although it's interesting, not pertaining to the water aspect of what we just said, but the the levels of close encounters.
Mhm.
Um, One of them, and I'm sorry, I'm not well read enough about this to be able to tell you. I think it's the second close encounters of the second kind. When the UFO causes changes to material things, i.e., burns grass, blows hot vapor,
Yeah,
something along those lines. And I think that's the second kind. I could be wrong. It might be the third. I don't know. I've not
crop
been
circles and stuff is
abducted,
what
and
you're.
I have not watched enough ET, so I
We're
don't
headed that
know.
way. We're headed that way.
Right. I'm saying.
So I think that covers it.
I think so. And you know what? If you have something else with water that you totally think that we like, how in the world did we miss it? Send it our way. We are super fallible. We miss things. If you think this is all bupkis, cool, tell us about it and
Yeah.
why. If you want to know more about something in particular, let us know. It really is a very extensive topic. So you can get there is so much information about water. You can get a PhD. You can do a doctoral study, get
You
your
get a
degree.
PH2OD if you want to.
Oh gosh. You can be a hydromancer.
Oh my god.
Oh, we could come up with little things like that all day long,
I
man.
know, man.
Oh,
It's gross,
jeez.
but it's wonderful.
But let us know. Hey guys, we're doing a Cosmo tomorrow.
You can say it. I mean, you could probably say it
Uh,
because by the time that
right. We're continuing on with the theme of water, and we are talking about Kat Von D and
baptism,
her recent baptism, how cool it is, and we're going to talk about some Christian Karens and how we ought not to be them.
Bruh.
So we're excited about this. I've been wanting to talk about
yeah,
this
I have to.
for a few weeks.
This is she did well to not get too muddy up the waters too much. Um, she really, man, her language sounds so much like my language up until I was about 25, 26 or so.
Yeah.
Just really. So I don't know. I have a lot of knowledge base and affinity there that I'm just like,
A lot of
that's cool, man.
empathy too. A
Yeah.
lot of empathy for what she's going
I
through.
I know she's not. I mean, I know we're a small channel also, but I know she's not really in that vein right now. But one day I'm gonna really sit. I want to see if she wants to sit down with us and chat about
Man,
some of
can you
these
imagine? That'd be real
Genesis
cool.
6 kind of ideas. Good stuff.
You know what though, dude? She seeks. She
Oh
really seeks
yeah,
after God. Oh,
she's not
it's so
afraid to.
cool.
She's not afraid to do it at
No,
all.
she's real cool. Her testimony's fantastic.
We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Um, yeah, absolutely. We're real excited about it. Hopefully y'all are too. With that said, as usual, we have run into the wee hours of the early morn,
It's only one.
and we want to bless you and go to bed.
Amen. Heck yeah. Oh man.
So, did you want to give the blessing, Rick, or
No,
do you
you
want
can
me to
go
do
for
it?
it.
Okay.
Knock it
The
out.
Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his countenance towards you and give you peace. And also, Lord, bring peace to Jerusalem and to Israel. And by doing that, you will bring peace to the Middle East as well. We know it won't last too terribly long, but we know it has to be in order for you to come.
Yeah.
And as part of the bride, along with the Spirit, we say, Come, Lord Jesus. So,
Lord Jesus.
Maranatha, guys.
God bless you guys. Maranatha. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Later, groovy cats.